You breathe in slowly as the world narrows to a single wooden gate, simple, sun-worn, unimpressed by your modern expectations. You push it open with a soft creak that feels like it's been waiting centuries just for this moment. The dawn air is cool enough to make you blink, as if the morning wants to double-check that you truly intend to enter a medieval monastery before breakfast. You step inside. Stone arches stretch above you like calm, patient eyebrows. The courtyard is still, holding its breath in that rare silence that exists only before the first bird decides to ruin everything with enthusiasm. You walk across the dew-soaked grass, your sandals catching just enough moisture to remind you that medieval mornings do not include heated floors. A bell rings once, low, steady, and gently judgmental. You're officially on the monk schedule now. You hear the rustle of robes from somewhere to your right. A figure moves calmly through the cloister walkway, ignoring you with the kind of polite indifference, usually reserved for cats or upper management supervisors. You're not offended. This is a place of contemplation, and you're still mentally scrolling through the 17 open tabs in your brain. As you walk farther, the monastery opens around you like a soft, unwinding story. Stone corridors, wooden beams darkened by years of smoky candles, and the faint smell of ink, the kind of ink that stains fingers for weeks and makes scribes mumble about existential crises. The first major historical truth of your new monastic day arrives quietly. Monks in many medieval European orders woke sometime around 2 or 3 a.m. for vigils, the longest nighttime prayer service. Yes, while your modern self debates waking up at 6:30, these monks are already 3 hours deep into chanting. You, fortunately, have shown up just after dawn. Consider it monk mode, on easy difficulty. You slip into the church through a heavy door, the scent of old incense lingering like a medieval air freshener. Faint chanting echoes from the choir, stalls the warm kind that vibrates in your ribs, not the unsettling kind that makes you wonder if someone is summoning a dragon. A few monks glide in slow rhythm through their prayers, hands folded, eyes half closed, as if they've transcended worldly concerns. Or maybe they're just very tired from being awake since the pagan gods were still hitting the snooze button. Light filters through narrow stained glass windows in strips of red and blue, painting the floor in colors soft enough to make even your busiest thoughts take a seat. You listen to the rhythm, the harmony, the breath shared between people who've decided their life's passion is being quiet together. Now, a tiny secret for you, the kind of obscure detail monks never bragged about. Some monasteries had very specific rules forbidding monks from laughing out loud, especially during meals or prayers. Not because laughter was sinful, but because one monk laughing usually meant another monk had done something mildly unhinged, like dropping bread into someone's lap, which led to chaos. And chaos, in monastic terms, meant a mildly raised voice. You move deeper through the church, trying not to laugh at that thought, because technically you're already breaking Rule 17a, no amused exhalations near the choir stalls. You feel the calmness settle in. Your breath eases. Your shoulders unhook from your ears. You're becoming part of the quiet. A monk walks past holding a candle so delicately you're not fully convinced he isn't floating. He gives you a nod, a universal sign that says, "Welcome. Please don't trip over anything sacred." Your stomach grumbles. This is unfortunate, because today you will be eating like a medieval monk, which means your meals will be simple, quiet, and deeply unexciting. But before food comes prime, the next prayer service. Then work, then more work, then a tiny break, then more work disguised as spiritual enrichment. It's like a full-time job, but with fewer snack breaks and more illuminated manuscripts. You step back into the courtyard, where the early light now warms the stones. A few monks tend the herb, garden, sage, lavender, maybe a rebellious sprig of mint if the abbot isn't looking. The monastery's kitchen depends on this little patch of green, and so do the infirmary and the scribes, who like to chew mint while copying long texts because it keeps them awake. Medieval monks invented the original focus gum, though historians still debate whether this was an intentional productivity hack or just accidental chewing. You walk along the cloister toward the dormitory, passing wooden doors carved with tiny, intricate patterns, flowers, knots, symbols that look like someone started drawing and never stopped. You hear birds now, louder and less respectful than earlier. They dart around the eaves like they own the place, which in fairness, they sort of do. A monk, sweeping the walkway, pauses, leans on his broom, and gives you a look that's both serene and vaguely amused. As if he's seen every type of visitor wander in: pilgrims, nobles, confused travelers, and now, you, trying very hard to seem like you belong in a 12th century monastic routine despite being emotionally attached to Wi-Fi. "Welcome," he says softly. "You probably won't make it through this day." He means it kindly, mostly. You take a breath, absorbing everything: the cool breeze, the scent of herbs, the quiet hum of a world running entirely on patience. Before we wander deeper into your new monastic life, let's take a moment to soften the mood. If you're enjoying this sleepy journey, feel free to gently like and subscribe. It truly supports these calm little explorations. And if you want, comment below with your location and the current time where you are. Monks love knowing the hour, even if their version involves sundials and guesswork. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You turn toward the refectory as the bell rings again, its tone low, warm, and ready to pull you further into the day that lies ahead. The bell rings again, slow, deep, and echoing across the stone walls with the confident authority of someone who has never once needed your permission. In a medieval monastery, the bell tower is basically the CEO, the manager, the life coach, and the alarm clock, all rolled into one. And now, like everyone else here, you follow its call. You step back into the cloister, where the morning light stretches lazily across the ground. The air has warmed just enough to loosen the chill clinging to your sleeves. You walk beneath the arches, noticing how the shadows form a tidy pattern along the walkway, as if even the sunlight respects monastic discipline. You head toward the chapter house, the room where monks gather every morning to read a passage from their rule book, usually the Rule of Street Benedict, and then confess any small misbehaviors. Small, in monastic terms, means things like talking too loudly, forgetting to bow at the right moment, or having thoughts that, while not technically sinful, were a bit too spicy for a Tuesday. The chapter house itself is solemn but peaceful. Stone benches line the circular walls, and a few monks sit already, hoods low, hands folded. You take a seat on the outer edge, like someone arriving late to a quiet lecture, trying not to make eye contact with anyone who might silently judge your posture. A monk stands and reads from the rule, a calm, steady voice that feels like it's been shaped by years of chanting. His words drift through the air, about humility, obedience, and the importance of not breaking silence unless absolutely necessary. It's all very gentle and reasonable, until you get to the part about punishments for complaining. Monks lived by the philosophy of, if you don't have something holy to say, don't say anything at all. You sit quietly, absorbing the rhythm of his voice. This is where your second major historical fact appears. Many medieval monasteries held morning meetings not just for rules, but for assigning daily tasks from gardening to manuscript copying to kitchen duty or tending livestock. It's not glamorous, but it's the backbone of monastic life. Everyone has a job, even you. A senior monk, possibly the workmaster, looks around the room and calls out assignments. 3 monks to the fields, 2 to the bakery, 1 to the infirmary, a few to the scriptorium, where the day's writing begins. Then he looks at you. You brace yourself. "Guest," he says gently, "you will go with the scriptorium today." Of course, the universe has chosen the one room where sitting still is mandatory. You tell yourself you're ready for this, even though your modern attention span secretly files an internal complaint. As the monks rise, robes rustling like quiet waves, you stand and follow the small procession out of the chapter house. You walk through another stone corridor, and the air changes cooler, sharper, scented faintly with parchment and ink. The scriptorium waits ahead. You step inside slowly, drawn in by the glow of sunlight bouncing off white vellum pages. Rows of wooden desks stand neatly, each holding an unfinished manuscript, quills resting like sleeping birds. The room feels almost sacred, not because of the silence, but because of the patient intention behind every shelf, every stool, every faint ink stain. At a corner table, a monk dips his quill and begins writing with slow, careful strokes. This is where another obscure monastic tidbit surfaces. Some monks actually warmed their ink pots with candles to keep the ink flowing smoothly in winter. Cold weather could freeze or thicken ink, leading to blotches, and blotches led to frustration, and frustration led to existential questions about the nature of patience, an emotion monasteries tried very hard to avoid. You're assigned. Desk holds a half-finished page. The script is beautiful, neat, rounded, consistent. The kind of handwriting that could never possibly be reproduced by anyone who has ever signed for a package in a hurry. A monk sits beside you and smiles. "Inscribe just this one line today," he says, slowly. You nod, though you have no idea how to hold a quill in a way that won't ruin a priceless sheet of calfskin. You dip the tip. You inhale. You begin. The scratch of the feather against the surface is soft enough to lull you into a trance. Even your thoughts start to move more slowly, aligning themselves with the rhythm of the room. You trace the careful curves and lines, shaping letters people might read centuries from now, assuming future readers have the patience of saints and extremely strong magnifying glasses. A monk across the room clears his throat, a rare sound, and therefore surprisingly dramatic. Everyone glances at him like he just yelled "fire" during prayer. He bows apologetically, then continues writing. The monastery treats noise like a precious commodity. But it's not all solemnity here. You notice a small doodle in the margin of your page. A tiny dragon, harmless and smiling, drawn in red ink. It's a reminder of another truth scholars love to discuss. Historians still debate whether monks added marginal doodles purely out of playfulness or to keep themselves awake during long copying sessions. Some doodles look whimsical. Others look like the product of someone who has been staring at the same page since sunrise. Time flows strangely in this room. Minutes stretch, sounds soften, the daylight thins as clouds drift lazily outside. You fall into a quiet rhythm, the kind that feels almost meditative, almost like dreaming with your eyes open. Another bell rings, this time lighter, brighter. It signals the next transition, the little break before the midday meal. You release the quill gently, flex your fingers, and notice your hand has cramped into the shape of a medieval claw. It's fine. It's normal. It's all part of becoming a monk for the day. As you walk out of the scriptorium, your eyes adjust to the brighter courtyard. The air smells faintly of bread, now warm, earthy, comforting. The kitchen fires must be going. A monk nearby carries a basket of herbs from the garden, and you catch the aroma of rosemary and thyme. Before heading to the refectory, you stand for a moment under the arches, letting the breeze cool your face. The day is still young, and you've already copied a manuscript, learned about ink temperature, and participated in a silent meeting without accidentally making a joke. You're doing better than expected. Even the bell approves, though. It'll never actually say it out loud. You take a quiet breath. Now it's time for your first monastic meal. You follow the slow-moving line of monks toward the refectory, the long dining hall that functions less like a cafeteria and more like a meditation disguised as lunch. The air inside is warm, filled with the scent of fresh bread and simmering vegetables. Heavy wooden tables stretch from one end of the room to the other, polished by generations of elbows that never leaned too aggressively, because leaning aggressively would technically count as disruptive posture. You find a place near the middle of a bench. The wood is slightly uneven, but it's the kind of unevenness that feels earned. Sunlight glows through high windows, dust drifting like unconcerned spirits who don't mind that you haven't slept enough. The meal begins not with food, but with a prayer, soft, rhythmic, delivered by a monk standing at a reading desk. His voice has that cozy, half-whisper quality that says, "I've done this 7,000 times, and I'll do it 7,000 more," without sounding bored. You bow your head with everyone else, feeling the quiet settle like a warm blanket. This is when your third major historical fact arrives. Monks in many medieval orders ate 2 meals a day during most of the year, and only one during periods of fasting. Breakfast, as a concept, would not really approve of this schedule. When the prayer ends, the serving begins. Bowls appear simple pottery filled with stew. The ingredients are humble: beans, onions, carrots, maybe a hopeful hint of barley. A monk sets a loaf of coarse brown bread nearby, thick and rustic, the kind of bread that takes itself very seriously. You take your portion quietly. You chew quietly. You exist quietly. Because here's the obscure tidbit they don't tell you in most history books. In some monasteries, monks communicated during meals using a special sign language developed specifically to avoid breaking silence. There were signs for bread, water, wine, books, salt, help, "I'm done," and presumably one for Please pass that thing before I lose my mind. You watch a monk a few seats down subtly gesture with 2 fingers tapping his chin, apparently the sign for cheese. Another monk nods and hands him a small, pale lump that is technically edible but would never make it onto any modern food blog. The refectory is not completely silent, though. One monk reads aloud from a lectern, voice steady, delivering something educational or spiritually edifying. Today's reading sounds like a saint's biography, full of modest heroism, surprising metaphors, and a level of patience that would make any modern listener suspicious. Meanwhile, everyone else eats with monk-like efficiency. You try to keep up, holding the spoon in a way that doesn't betray you as someone born long after forks were invented. The stew is flavorful in a gentle, earnest way, as if the herbs from the garden spent all morning preparing their resume. As you eat, you notice the rhythm of the room, the synchronized movements, the soft clinks of spoons against pottery, the almost choreographed stillness. It's soothing, in its own medieval minimalist aesthetic. Halfway through your bowl, you become aware of just how hungry you are. Medieval life, it turns out, burns more calories than scrolling through your phone while thinking about exercising. You tear off a piece of bread and dip it into the broth, grateful for the grounding simplicity of the moment. Across from you, a monk with a round, gentle face gives you a tiny nod of encouragement. It's the monastic equivalent of saying, "You're doing great, sweetie," without actually saying anything. The meal continues calmly until one small incident almost breaks the tranquility. A young monk accidentally drops his spoon, it hits the table, rolls, and lands on the floor with a clatter that echoes like someone dropped a weapon in a library. Everyone freezes for a microsecond. Then the monk inhales, stands, retrieves the spoon with solemn dignity, and returns to his seat. No one reacts, no one laughs. The silence absorbs the moment the way deep water absorbs a pebble. But inside, you suspect half the monks mentally added this to tomorrow's chapter meeting confessions. Historians still debate whether some rules about silence were meant to maintain discipline or simply to avoid social awkwardness escalating into chaos. You finish your stew slowly, letting the warmth seep through you. The bread is dense but comforting. A jug of water passes around the table, accompanied by soft hand gestures instead of words. The reading monk continues his story, the cadence steady, almost hypnotic. Eventually, the meal ends, as it began with a prayer. The monks stand, bow their heads, and give thanks for the food, the work, and the quiet. You join them, your body already adapting to the gentle structure of the day. When the prayer concludes, bowls are gathered, tables wiped, and everyone files out with the kind of orderly grace you only see in places where no one is allowed to say, "Wait, where do I put this?" You step into the cloister again, refreshed, comfortable, and just a little drowsy. The sun is higher now, warming the stone beneath your feet. The garden smells stronger, more mint, more thyme, a hint of rosemary drifting from the kitchen door. A few monks head toward the fields, others return to the scriptorium. But you, as today's guest, are guided toward a different part of the monastery, the outer buildings, where the monks do their physical labor, wood chopping, grain grinding, tending animals. A monk with kind eyes gestures for you to follow him. "Work strengthens the soul," he says, his voice soft, "and sometimes the shoulders." You walk with him toward the barns, feeling your meal settle comfortably. A breeze moves through the cloister, arches behind you. The bell tower stands tall above everything, silent for now, as if giving you a small window of peace before the next cue. You exhale slowly. Your monastic afternoon is about to begin. You follow the monk into a wide, sunlit courtyard behind the cloister, an area that could generously be called the monastic gym. Except there are no weights, no loud grunting, and no inspirational posters about believing in yourself. Instead, there are tools, gardens, barns, and plenty of opportunities to lift things that nature has thoughtfully made heavy. Your guide gestures toward a stack of firewood waiting to be split. "We all take turns," he says with a serene smile, the kind a person develops only after making peace with manual labor decades ago. Today is a light day. Light is debatable. One log alone looks like it could serve as a part-time defensive wall. Still, you nod, because you're here to live a day as a medieval monk, and the universe has decided to introduce you to the spiritual art of non-competitive lumberjacking. The monk hands you a wooden-handled axe. It's not sharp enough to terrify you, but sharp enough to remind you that your fingers are mortal. You position a log upright, take a breath, and swing. The axe hits. The log does not split, but it does feel judged. The monk steps beside you with kindness and precisely zero sarcasm. "Try again," he says, as if you're a novice monk and not a modern visitor whose workout routine involves carrying groceries inside in one trip. You swing again. This time the log gives a polite crack, separating like two people mutually agreeing they weren't right for each other. Not bad. Not graceful, but not bad. A line of monks nearby works in comfortable silence. One splits wood with rhythmic precision, another ties bundles of sticks, and a third stacks them neatly under a lean-to roof. You join this flowing pattern, and soon your movements sync with theirs. And here comes your fourth major historical fact. Many medieval monasteries followed the rule of street, Benedict's emphasis on balanced labor, meaning monks spent significant parts of their day doing agricultural, domestic, or workshop tasks. Prayer and study were important, but physical work kept everything running and kept monks grounded in humility. You carry your newly split logs toward the pile. The weight settles onto your arms in a way that says, "You have not done this in your life, have you?" Somewhere nearby, chickens cluck with the entitled attitude of creatures who believe the entire monastery exists solely for them. One hops onto a barrel and stares at you with judgment that transcends species. The monk beside you chuckles under his breath, a tiny sound, barely audible. "Brother Matthew says they are good for humility," he says softly. "Chickens remind us not to take ourselves seriously." This is your obscure tidbit of the day. Some monasteries kept chickens not just for eggs, but also because they were known to wander into lessons, disrupt readings, or steal scraps from kitchens. Their chaotic energy was unintentionally instructional. You carry another armful of logs, feeling the steady burn in your shoulders. The courtyard hums, quietly with motion. A few monks mend tools near the workshop. Another tends a small orchard where pears and apples hang in sleepy afternoon light. Someone draws water from a well with the calm endurance of a person who has stopped being impressed by the concept of gravity. You take a break, wiping your forehead. The air tastes warm, earthy, the scent of hay, sun-warmed wood, and distant bread cooling on a shelf. You lean on the axe gently, trying to look like a person contemplating spiritual truths rather than catching your breath. A monk working nearby begins humming a soft, tuneless sound. Humming technically isn't speech, so it's allowed, though probably monitored by a secret list of acceptable notes. Above you, clouds drift lazily across the blue sky, and sunlight filters between them like slow-moving thoughts. Time stretches. The afternoon settles into your bones, heavy but soothing. After a while, the monk leads you to another task, helping in the garden. Rows of herbs and vegetables sit in neat lines, meticulously cared for. This is not just food, it's medicine, seasoning, dye, ink thickener, insect repellent, and occasionally that plant Brother Aidan swears cures headaches, but really just tastes weird. You kneel beside the beds and begin removing weeds with gentle fingers. The soil is cool and welcoming. Worms wriggle away, unimpressed by your presence. Mint brushes your sleeve, releasing a bright scent that pushes the fatigue out of your thoughts. As you work, your guide speaks softly. "The garden teaches patience," he says. "You cannot hurry the plants." You nod, impressed by the wisdom, and also relieved to be doing an activity where nothing weighs as much as firewood. A butterfly drifts past, ignoring the monastery's carefully enforced silence rules. A bee hums in circles, like it has its own monastic schedule to keep. The world feels simple, grounded, rhythmic. By now you've noticed that the monastery runs not on clocks or internal motivation, but on bells. And right on cue, another bell rings soft, steady, echoing across the walls. It signals the transition to mid-afternoon prayer. None, pronounced known, though pronounced none, internally by tired novices. You stand, brushing soil from your hands. The monks rise from their tasks with the choreography of a group who've done this every day for years. Tools are set aside, buckets returned, bundles stacked neatly. You walk with them toward the church once more, passing the familiar arches and the same herb garden from this morning, now warmer, richer, buzzing with bees instead of birds. And in the quiet steps toward the chapel, you feel something unexpected. The rhythm of the monastery has begun to wrap gently around your thoughts. Your breathing has slowed. Your mind has softened. Your day, structured, simple, patient, feels like it's guiding you deeper into a world built on quiet repetition. You reach the threshold of the church. The air is cooler here, dimmer, scented faintly with candle smoke. You step inside with the monks, ready for the soft chanting that will carry you through the next hour of your medieval day. The church feels cooler now, as if the stone itself remembers how to hold the morning chill. You step into the dimness, letting your eyes adjust to the muted glow of candles flickering along the walls. The monks file into their stalls with the slow, deliberate movements of people who have done this thousands of times. Each step, a small act of devotion rather than a transition from one task to another. You settle onto a wooden bench. It creaks softly beneath you. An ancient sound, the kind that says, "You're welcome to sit, but please don't wiggle too much." The bell's echo fades. Silence folds itself neatly around you. This, right here, is none the mid-afternoon prayer, pronounced known, though your sleepy modern brain stubbornly insists on hearing none, which feels unintentionally poetic. Monks treated this hour with tenderness. A brief spiritual reset before returning to physical work or study. A single monk begins the chant. His voice rises gently, warm as a sunbeam slipping through the nave windows. Other voices join him, layer upon layer of calm sound that moves like slow water. The harmonies are not perfect in a modern studio sense, but they blend with a sincerity that makes perfection unnecessary. This is your fifth major historical fact. Services like none were part of the divine office. The cycle of daily prayers monks were required to observe. These prayers divided the day into sacred intervals, shaping time itself into something contemplative. You close your eyes for a moment. The chant vibrates through the air, subtle and steady, like the heartbeat of the monastery itself. You feel your body soften into the rhythm. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw loosens. You breathe in the scent of wax, old wood, and stone, each carrying centuries of quiet devotion. Your mind begins to drift in that meditative way, where thoughts no longer line up like soldiers, but wander gently like sheep, unhurried and slightly confused. A monk steps forward to read a short passage of scripture, voice calm and steady. His tones echo gently off the stone pillars, giving the words an almost floating quality. You find yourself listening, not for meaning, but for texture. The rise and fall, the pauses, the soft breaths between lines. When it ends, another chant begins. This one lighter, almost playful, as if the monks allow themselves exactly 1% cheerfulness at this hour. And here comes your obscure tidbit. Some monastic communities believed angels joined in their chants during none, especially when the harmonies were particularly sweet or unexpected. This belief led monks to sing with a special tenderness at this hour, just in case heavenly beings were harmonizing. You listen closely, half wondering if any extra voices are quietly slipping between the notes. The sound swells, then softens, drifting like dust motes through sunlight. Then, a soft rustle breaks the moment one monk shifts slightly, his robe brushing the wooden stall. It's barely audible, but in a world built on silence, even a tiny movement feels like a headline. Historians still debate whether monks genuinely preferred this intense quiet, or simply embraced it because the rulebook insisted. Some modern scholars argue silence reduced conflict. Others claim it created a different kind of inner noise. But here, in this soft hour, the silence feels like a gift. You sit with it, breathing slowly. Time stretches. The prayer ends. A final chant fades into the rafters. The monks bow their heads, then rise in perfect gentle disarray, no rush, no urgency, just quiet transitions back to the world of work. You follow them out, stepping back into daylight. The sun has shifted westward, turning the courtyard golden. Shadows stretch long across the stone, and the breeze carries the dusty sweetness of late afternoon. A monk approaches you, a familiar one from earlier, the one who said you probably wouldn't make it through the day. He looks at you now with mild surprise. "You're still standing," he says warmly. "Good. There's more to see." He leads you to a small stone workshop near the edge of the grounds. Inside, the air smells faintly of wool and warm earth. Looms stand in neat rows, and a soft clacking sound fills the room. Several monks sit at their stations, weaving cloth with the calm focus of people who genuinely like repetition. "We weave what we wear," your guide explains. "Wool in winter, linen in summer. Every thread is part of the life we choose." A monk at a nearby loom gestures you closer. His hands move in a slow, practiced rhythm, over, under, beat, repeat. You watch the threads tighten into neat, even rows. The colors are soft, natural whites, warm browns, muted grays. No dyes here, except what the monastery can make from plants in the garden. He invites you to try. You sit at the loom, touch the wooden shuttle, and attempt to mimic the pattern. It goes poorly. The thread bunches. The line gets wobbly. The cloth protests by becoming a small topographical map. The monk smiles without judgment, smoothing your mistake with experienced fingers. "Patience," he says. "The cloth will forgive you." You keep trying. Slowly, the movements begin to make sense. The shuttle glides more smoothly. The threads align. Your breathing matches the rhythm of the loom, steady, even, soothing. Minutes blend into a timeless hum of weaving and quiet. Eventually, the bell rings again, not loudly, but with a tone that feels like evening beginning to clear its throat. The monks pause, set their tools aside, and prepare for the next transition. You step outside. The sky has softened into warm amber. The monastery feels calmer now, as if settling into its evening self. You breathe deeply, the scent of fresh cloth and cooling stone mingling with the promise of supper. Your evening in the monastery is about to begin. Evening settles over the monastery like a slow-closing eyelid. The sky deepens into honeyed gold as you follow the monks back toward the refectory, your steps naturally falling into their steady rhythm. After a day of prayers, labor, and weaving experiments that looked more like textile abstract art, you're more than ready for supper. Whatever that means in a medieval context, where culinary excitement is strictly optional. The refectory feels different in the evening. Softer, dimmer. Only a few candles are lit, their warm glow flickering across wooden beams and casting gentle shadows that sway like quiet dancers. You take your place at the long table, the wood cool beneath your fingers. Monks file in with the same calm precision you've seen all day, though now their movements carry the subtle heaviness of honest fatigue. It's a good kind of tired, earned, humble, and somehow cleaner than the digital exhaustion you're used to. A monk approaches with a pot of warm vegetable pottage. It's thicker than the midday stew, almost creamy, filled with grains and greens from the garden. A loaf of dark bread follows, more serious looking than the earlier one, as if bread also has a bedtime personality. Before anyone touches a spoon, a prayer is spoken, soft, measured, gracious. Then, blessed silence. You begin to eat. The pottage is simple but comforting, the kind of food that tastes like it truly believes you had a long day. The bread is dense and slightly sour, perfect for dipping. The warmth spreads through your chest in slow waves. Nearby, the designated reader opens a book and begins to recite his voice, a dust-colored thread that weaves through the room. It's a saint's story again, though tonight it has a slightly more adventurous tone. You suspect he chose one with minor plot twists to keep everyone awake. And here comes your sixth major historical fact. Monks often ate lighter meals in the evening, especially during Lent and other fasts. Many orders forbade meat altogether, except for the very ill. Supper was meant to nourish, not indulge. You take another sip of pottage, appreciating the medieval commitment to modest portions. Your modern stomach, used to late-night snacks with questionable nutritional motives, seems surprisingly content with this approach. Across the table, a monk gives a small hand gesture, 2 fingers together, palm sideways. The cheese sign. You've started recognizing them. It's practically monastic charades. Another monk nods, retrieves a small wooden bowl, and hands it over. The cheese looks humble but smells inviting. You nibble a piece. It tastes like a distant cousin of modern cheese who has retired to a simpler life. As the meal continues, the shadows within the refectory stretch longer. Candles glow more brightly as natural light slips away, replaced by the soft hush of evening. You hear the subtle scrape of spoons, the rustle of robes, the steady cadence of the reading voice. It feels almost like the monastery is tucking itself in. An obscure tidbit drifts into your mind, courtesy of the evening calm. Some monasteries believed eating too close to bedtime encouraged dreams that were spiritually inconvenient. So supper was served early, long before the night's final prayers. This kept sleep peaceful, and dreams appropriate for holy reflection. You imagine monks rating their dreams each morning, divinely inspired, mildly distracting, definitely caused by too much barley. You finish your bowl slowly, savouring the warm simplicity of it. The monk reading at the lectern closes his book with a soft thump, then offers a closing prayer, short, gentle, drifting into the air like a sigh. Everyone rises quietly, dishes are collected, tables are wiped. The room empties in a calm procession, leaving behind only the scent of food and candle smoke and the faint memory of soft voices. Outside, twilight has deepened into a soft indigo. The air is cooler, touched with the scent of damp earth and slowly settling evening. You follow the monks into the cloister, where lanterns glow faintly along the walkway. Shadows move like watercolor strokes under the arches. Your guide from earlier, kind eyes, soft smile. The monk who predicted your downfall joins you again. There is little left to do, he says quietly. But the day is not finished. He leads you toward the church once more. In the deepening dark, the silhouette of the bell tower looks almost otherworldly, like a quiet sentinel watching over the monastery. You hear the faint sound of pages turning from somewhere inside, monks preparing for their nighttime prayers. You step into the church, now lit only by a handful of candles. The interior feels softer, almost blurred around the edges. The wooden stalls glow with warm amber light, while the stone arches above disappear into gentle darkness. You sit, letting the silence settle across your shoulders like a well-worn shawl. This is the hour before Compline, the final prayer service of the night. The monks call it the completion. A peaceful ending, a closing sigh after a long, humble day. You wait in this dim, sacred space, listening to the quiet breaths of the monks around you. Your own breathing slows to match theirs, deeper, calmer, almost rhythmic. Historians still debate whether medieval monks genuinely felt this serenity every evening, or whether some nights were full of inward fidgeting and unspoken worries. But tonight, sitting here in the hush of candle-lit stone, you feel the serenity is real simple, earned, and deeply human. Your eyelids grow heavy. The day has carried you gently from dawn's quiet steps to twilight's fading warmth. Soon, Compline will begin. And after that sleep, the kind softened by prayer, work, and stillness. Your monastic night is approaching. The candles tremble softly along the stone walls as the monks gather for Compline, their silhouettes long and gentle against the dim church interior. You sit among them, feeling the calm thicken like warm wool around your shoulders. The air is quiet, almost drowsy, as if even the shadows are preparing for bed. A single bell strikes one note, low and steady. It vibrates through the nave, through the wood beneath your hands, and somewhere deep inside your chest. Then silence. Deep, waiting silence. A monk steps forward, his voice low, soothing, and shaped by decades of ending days this same way. The first words of Compline are simple, ancient, and designed to feel like a soft exhale, a request for peace, rest, and protection through the night. Your breathing slows almost automatically. Your shoulders ease downward. Your eyes soften as the prayer gathers around you like a shelter. This hour is not about teaching or discipline or ritual precision. It's about releasing the day, piece by piece, like unbraiding a long, tired rope. The chanting begins, slow and unhurried. The harmonies drift upward toward the dark arches, curling through the air in quiet spirals. It's simpler than earlier. Services, no grand flourishes, no complicated rhythms. Just voices, honest and calm, layering over one another like soft blankets. You close your eyes for a moment. The sound sinks into you. You feel yourself unraveling, not in a falling apart way, but in a finally letting go of everything you've been holding kind of way. This is your 7th major historical fact. Compline was often considered the most intimate and comforting of the monastic prayers, meant to soothe the spirit before bed. Some monasteries even sang an antiphon to the Virgin Mary afterward, a kind of lullaby for grown men living quietly for God. The chant continues, slow and steady. Even your thoughts seem to sway with it. You're not sure if the music is calming you or if you're simply becoming part of it. A candle sputters softly nearby, its flame stretching and settling again. The light flickers across the monks' faces, showing peaceful lines carved over years of silence, labor, and devotion. Their expressions hold that particular stillness you only see in people who've learned how to live quietly inside themselves. One monk begins reading a brief passage meant to close the day, a reminder of humility, forgiveness, and letting go of the small irritations or clumsy mistakes that happened since morning. You think back to your wobbly weaving, your dramatic battle with the log, and the spoon drop incident from lunch. All forgiven, all softened, all drifting away in this warm hush. And now comes your obscure tidbit of the evening. Some monasteries had a ritual known as the Great Silence, beginning immediately after compline and lasting until after the next morning's first prayer. During this time, no one spoke, not even in whispers. The entire night belonged to quiet. Imagine that. A whole community tucked into silence like a shared dream, a kind of deep, ancient sleep mode. You watch the monks bow their heads as the final words of compline drift into stillness. The church becomes so quiet, you can hear the faint crackle of a wick, the soft shifting of robes, the subtle rustle of someone's sleeve brushing stone. Historians still debate whether monks truly loved this great silence, or whether it was simply too strict to break. But standing here now, you feel the appeal. Silence isn't empty, it's gentle, full, safe. The final antiphon begins. The melody is soft, almost whispered, like a lullaby for the soul. It washes over you in slow waves. When it ends, no one moves for a moment. The stillness is its own unspoken prayer. Then, with slow, deliberate motions, the monks rise and begin to file out of the church. Their footsteps are feather-light, absorbed by the ancient stone floor. You rise with them, your body following the calm rhythm you've absorbed throughout the day. Outside, night has finally taken hold. The sky is a deep velvet blue, sprinkled with stars that look older than the monastery itself. Lanterns glow faintly under the fanger, cloister arches, guiding the monks toward their dormitory like small floating moons. You walk with them down the long walkway, your feet padding softly beneath the vaulted ceiling. The great silence has begun. No one speaks, no one gestures, no one breaks the spell. It feels serene, almost sacred, like walking through a living dream. At the dormitory door, the monks slip inside one by one. The room is long and simple, filled with rows of wooden beds separated by thin partitions. Each bed holds a straw mattress, a wool blanket, and the kind of pillow that looks spiritually enriching but absolutely not ergonomic. You find your place. Your blanket is surprisingly warm. Your mattress is surprisingly lumpy. But somehow, both feel reassuring, grounded, honest, free from the noise of modern life. You lie down. The room grows still. A few monks shift quietly, settling into sleep. One sighs gently, the kind of sigh that releases an entire day. You breathe in the scent of wood, wool, and stone. You breathe out slowly, letting the weight of the day drift away. The monastery settles around you, softly, silently, completely at peace. This is the end of your first full day as a medieval monk. And tomorrow, just before dawn, the bell will call you again. But for now, rest. Sleep comes easily here. You are asleep deeply, peacefully, and with the kind of heavy-limbed stillness that medieval mattresses rarely inspire. The dormitory is silent except for the gentle breathing of monks and the occasional, very polite snore that sounds more like someone exhaling centuries of contemplation. But then, a bell rings, not loudly, not harshly, just a single, resonant note drifting through the dark like someone tapping the night on the shoulder. Your eyes open slowly. The ceiling beams above you are faint outlines in the dim moonlight. For a moment, you have no idea where you are, just the soft blur of sleep clinging to your mind. Then the smell of wool, straw, and cold stone reminds you you're in a medieval monastery, and it's time for matins, the night office. You sit up. The air is cold enough to convince your skin that blankets are a divine innovation. You pull your robe tighter, feet touching the cool floor. Around you, monks rise quietly, their silhouettes soft and slow, moving like people who've had centuries to practice waking up at unholy hours. No one speaks. The great silence still holds. You follow the others out of the dormitory, the floorboards whispering beneath your feet. A lantern ahead casts a warm halo, guiding the procession through the hallway and into the cloister. Outside, the night is ink black, salted with stars. The air smells of damp stone and distant pine. You walk beneath the arches, your breath visible in faint white clouds. The monastery feels like a different world now, still, muted. A quiet kingdom wrapped in darkness. Inside the church, only a few candles burn, their flames tiny islands of gold in the vast night. The monks enter, bow, and take their places. You sit in the same stall as before, feeling the cool wood beneath your fingers. Then the chanting begins. It starts low, almost a murmur, as if the monks are gently waking the air itself. Their voices rise slowly, weaving through the darkness like threads of light. The melody is softer than the daytime chants, deeper, more contemplative. This is Matins, the long night prayer, your eighth major historical fact. Matins in many medieval monasteries lasted between 45 minutes and 2 hours, depending on the season, the order, and whether the cantor had a sense of mercy. You listen as the voices blend, smooth as river water. The sound doesn't wake you fully, it holds you in that in-between place, where you're not quite dreaming, yet not fully awake. The candles flicker, shadows tremble along the walls. You breathe slowly, matching the rhythm of the chant. A monk steps up to read from a large book, its pages thick and yellowed. His voice is steady, shaped by years of midnight readings. The passage is long, meditative, and just mysterious enough to feel at home in this hour when the world is asleep. You half listen, half float. The words curl around your thoughts, drifting in and out like a tide. And now comes your obscure tidbit. Some monasteries believed Matins was the hour when the boundary between earthly life and heavenly life felt thinnest, making it ideal for prayer, and occasionally for monks quietly wrestling with drowsiness. Some even had subtle hand signals for stay awake. You catch yourself leaning slightly, eyelids heavy. A monk nearby clears his throat, a quiet reminder to stay present. You straighten just a little. Minutes slip by like soft footsteps. A psalm is sung, then another. Sometimes the voices swell with gentle intensity. Sometimes they fall back into a near whisper. The air feels thick with devotion, but also with the ordinary human struggle of being awake at an hour that makes dawn look late. Historians still debate whether monks genuinely reached spiritual clarity during these early hours, or whether many simply achieved a state of holy sleepiness. Judging by your current state, you're leaning toward the latter. The waxing and waning of the chant pulls you deeper into a soft trance. The church feels timeless, as if the night is holding its breath. Even your thoughts begin moving slower, gentler, like they've put on thick wool robes themselves. Finally, after a long, soothing progression of psalms and readings, there's a shift. The chanting changes tone lighter, more final. The last prayer of Matins unfolds through the dark, tender and slow, like the closing of a well-loved book. A monk sings a simple, descending phrase that feels like a lullaby in reverse, designed not to send you to sleep, but to ease you gently into the next part of the night. The service ends quietly. No grand gesture, no dramatic finish. Just a soft, collective breath. The monks rise, with slow, practiced grace. You follow them out into the cloister, the night still deep around you. The stars shine brighter now, as if they've been keeping vigil with you. Your body feels light, suspended somewhere between fatigue and serenity. Some monks return to their beds until dawn. Some stay up to read or keep watch. You, guided gently by your host, head back to the dormitory. The straw mattress greets you like an old friend who knows all about your tired spine, but also knows you'll forgive it. You settle beneath the blanket once more, the cold air wrapping the edges of the wool. Your head sinks into the pillow. Your breath slows. Sleep arrives quickly, soft, deep, and ancient feeling. This rhythm of waking and resting is strange to your modern mind. But here, in the monastery's quiet nighttime heart, it feels natural. You drift off again, because even monks know the night is long and dawn will come soon enough. You wake again, not abruptly, not with the jolt of alarm clocks or buzzing devices, but with a soft awareness that the dormitory is stirring around you. A faint grey light seeps through the small window slits, painting pale rectangles across the wooden floor. The monks rise quietly, moving like shadows learning to walk. The air is cool, touched with that unmistakable smell of early morning. Damp stone, wool blankets, and the soft, earthy scent of the courtyard waking up. You inhale deeply. It feels older than you, older than the monastery, older than the idea of morning itself. A bell rings, gentle, measured, patient. The sound threads through your drowsiness, guiding you back into motion. This is Lauds, the dawn prayer, named for its purpose, praise. You pull on your robe and join the silent procession back toward the church. The door creaks softly as you push it open, and the interior greets you with a dim bluish glow. The candles haven't been refreshed yet, so their flames flicker small and low, like they, too, are shaking off sleep. The monks take their places. You sit in your familiar stall. A hush settles across the room, deeper than darkness, clearer than silence. Then the chanting begins. Unlike the nighttime chant of matins, Lauds feels lighter, rising like the slow lifting of eyelids. The voices blend in long, smooth lines, serene but with a quiet strength to them, like someone gently encouraging the sun to get up already. Here comes your 9th major historical fact. Lauds was often filled with psalms of thanksgiving, marking the transition from night to day. It symbolized hope, renewal, and the gentle cosmic reset that dawn represents in nearly every culture. You listen as the music expands, filling the space with calm conviction. The light outside grows stronger by the minute. Shadows inside the church begin to soften and retreat. Your eyes wander along the rough stone walls, the carved wood of the stalls, the stained glass window that now glows faintly with the colors of the coming sunrise. The chant continues steady, layered, soothing. Your mind drifts with it, as if the sound is gently sweeping away the last remnants of sleep. A monk steps forward to begin a reading. His voice is calm, brightening just slightly with the dawn. He speaks of gratitude, humility, and the steady, patient work of beginning again each morning. You feel the day settle around you like a warm cloak. Everything slows. Everything softens. And now, your obscure tidbit of this hour. Some monasteries practiced a ritual at dawn where monks washed their faces using water collected the night before, believing the coolness held a certain purity. Certain orders even had designated brothers whose entire job was to ensure the water basins were filled and ready before Lauds. Medieval skincare routines were humble but strangely poetic. You imagine monks splashing icy water on their faces at dawn, gasping quietly but pretending it's spiritually invigorating. The chanting resumes, weaving through the reading like golden thread through cloth. A higher voice joins in a young monk, perhaps bringing a delicate brightness to the harmony. The sun finally crests the horizon. A warm amber glow spills through the windows, brushing your face with gentle heat. The stained glass flickers to life, painting the floor in honeyed blues and muted reds. The church slowly transforms from a night-bound sanctuary into a glowing cradle of morning. Your eyelids lower as you breathe in the new day. The monk beside you shifts slightly, his robe rustling like a soft sigh. Historians still debate whether these early morning chants were meant to keep monks alert after the sleep disruptions of matins, or simply to align the community with the rhythms of nature. But as the music swirls through you, it feels less like obligation and more like gratitude made audible. The final psalm of Lauds unfurls, smooth and steady. The air shimmers faintly in the new light. When the service ends, the silence that follows feels warm, not empty, like a gentle pause between breaths. The monks bow, rise, and file out quietly, their footsteps soft on the worn stone. Outside, morning has fully arrived. The courtyard glows in fresh gold, herbs glisten with dew, birds perch along the rooftops, chirping with unrestrained enthusiasm as if auditioning for a role as nature's alarm clock. You wince slightly at their volume. Some monks do too. The great silence ends, but the birds don't know about the transition. As you walk beneath the cloister arches, your guide appears once more, hood drawn, eyes soft with morning calm. "Breakfast," he says, speaking for the first time since yesterday's noon. His voice sounds almost new after so much quiet. He leads you toward a smaller building near the kitchen. The air smells faintly of warm bread and something herbal, mint tea, perhaps. Inside, breakfast is modest. A simple piece of bread, a small bowl of porridge, and a warm drink barely sweetened, but comforting. The monks speak only a little during this meal, just enough to coordinate tasks for the morning. Their voices are soft, barely above whispers, like the dawn has made everything tender and gentle. As you eat, sunlight spills through the window, warming your hands. The bread is fresh, the porridge earthy, the tea soothing. You feel grounded, present, surprisingly awake. Your guide finishes his meal, folds his hands, and looks toward you with a quiet smile. Now, he says, there is work to do. And so, with Louds behind you and a full day rising ahead, you prepare to step once more into the steady rhythm of monastic life. The labor, the learning, the silence, the small wonders. Morning has arrived in full. Your monk's day begins anew. The monastery hums gently with renewed morning energy as you step out of the refectory. The sun has climbed just high enough to warm the cloister stones, casting soft ribbons of light that sway across the walkway. Birds flutter between the eaves, chirping with the enthusiasm of creatures who don't have scheduled prayer obligations. Your guide gestures toward the familiar hallway leading to the scriptorium. It is a good morning for ink, he says, with a serene certainty usually reserved for weather forecasts or confident bakers. You follow him, passing monks already scattering to their assigned tasks, some toward the fields, some toward the workshop, one toward the laundry with a look of quiet resignation. Everyone appears content, purposeful, steady. Even the chickens seem unusually focused. The door to the scriptorium creaks softly as you enter. The room is just as you left it yesterday, flooded with pale morning sun, smelling of parchment, ink, and wooden desks warmed by decades of attentive hands. Quills rest in tidy clusters. Sheets of vellum wait with the patience of saints. Several monks are already writing, their quills making that soft, steady scratch you can feel between your ribs. You take your seat at your assigned desk, your somewhat clumsy masterpiece from yesterday, still resting there, complete with the secretly delightful dragon doodle in the margin. A monk approaches you with a fresh sheet of vellum. Today, he says gently, you practice letters. Just letters. Not lines, not sentences, not full passages about saints or kings. Letters. You nod, relieved. Your hand still remembers the mild trauma of yesterday's manuscript attempt. He places a small wooden guide on your desk, a template with carved slots to help align each stroke. It's an early medieval version of those handwriting worksheets children use today, except this one is lovingly handmade and carries the weight of absolute seriousness. You dip your quill, remembering the careful angle, the slow drag, the tiny breath you're supposed to take before each stroke. You begin shaping the first letter, A. It looks, all right, not magnificent, not worthy of a future museum display, but definitely recognizable as an A in a charitable mood. You continue. B, C, D. Your hand trembles slightly, but the rhythm comes faster than you expected. The process is oddly soothing, focused but calm, repetitive but meditative. Here comes your 10th major historical fact. Monks spent years learning to write with precision. Writing wasn't just a task. It was a devotional discipline, a spiritual craft meant to honor the sacred texts they copied. Some monks specialized in it, becoming scribes whose entire lives revolved around producing manuscripts that could outlast kingdoms. A soft cough echoes from a nearby desk. The monk there rubs his fingers, likely cramped from hours of work. He offers you a knowing glance, the shared look of two people battling the same enemy. Delicate handwriting. You return to your letters, forming each curve, each serif with exaggerated care. The ink glistens briefly, before sinking into the S. Vellum. The room's warm stillness wraps around you. Then you notice something curious. A monk a few desks away has begun embellishing the capital letters with tiny flourishes, not full illumination, just subtle decorative accents. His hand moves with such confidence, it's like watching someone braid sunlight. Another obscure tidbit arrives for you. In certain monasteries, scribes would warm their hands over small pots of charcoal in winter to keep fingers dexterous. Cold hands meant shaky letters, and shaky letters meant displeased abbots. Some scribes discreetly kept warm stones under their sleeves. You wish briefly for a warm stone of your own. Your fingers are stiffening, though not unpleasantly. It's the kind of stiffness that feels like progress. A monk passes behind you, peeks at your work, and gives a small nod, the monastic equivalent of a glowing 5-star review. You bask in the approval for 2 seconds before remembering, humility is a virtue here. Time drifts softly. The sun rises higher. The scriptorium becomes a quiet hive of gentle industry. A monk at the far end of the room sneezes. A tiny one, almost shy. Everyone pauses not to scold, but to ensure no ink has splattered anywhere of spiritual or aesthetic importance. Satisfied, the room resumes writing, as if nothing happened. Historians still debate whether these small pauses were instinctual or if monks were secretly trained to detect a sneeze-related manuscript emergency. You continue tracing letters until the page is half full, then 2/3, then nearly complete. The repetition lulls you into a meditative state, where each stroke of the quill feels like a small prayer. Eventually, a bell rings the mid-morning signal. Its tone is brighter than earlier ones, with a little more cheer, as if even the bell knows people have warmed up to the day by now. Pens are set down, quills cleaned, ink pots closed. The monks stretch their fingers subtly, avoiding anything too dramatic. You stand, feeling strangely proud of your uneven alphabet. The monk beside you glances at your work and whispers, "Well done." It's the first whisper you've heard all morning, and it feels like you've been knighted. Together, the monks leave the scriptorium, drifting back toward the courtyard. Outside, the sun paints the stones in warm gold. A few monks head toward the workshop, others toward the garden, and you, still absorbing the calm, steady rhythm of lettering, wait for your guide's next instruction. He appears beside you, clasping his hands. "You have worked well," he says. "Now it is time for something different." You follow him down a small path you haven't walked yet toward a building near the monastery wall. The faint smell of herbs drifts from its windows. You're heading toward the infirmary, a place where the monks care for the sick, the elderly, and occasionally, guests who discover medieval life is surprisingly physical. The door stands open. Warm, fragrant air drifts out. You step inside. Your next task awaits. The moment you step into the infirmary, the air changes. It's warmer here, softer, infused with the gentle perfume of crushed herbs and simmering decoctions. Sunlight filters through oiled parchment windows, turning the room a muted gold. Shelves line the walls, jars filled with dried leaves, roots, flowers, powders, and things that look suspiciously like, "I'm sure this won't hurt you," probably. A monk in a light brown robe approaches. His face is lined, kind, and quietly alert, the look of someone who has spent years listening to coughs, whispers, and the soft confessions of aching bodies. "Welcome," he says. "We practice care here, with God's help, and a few plants that smell stronger than humility." You give a respectful nod. He gestures for you to follow him. The infirmary isn't large, but it feels complete. Beds along one wall, baskets of linens stacked neatly, bundles of healing herbs hanging from the rafters. Lavender, rosemary, yarrow. Some you recognize, some you don't. Some you pretend to recognize, to look spiritually informed. Your guide hands you a small mortar and pestle. "We grind today," he says. Slowly, patiently. You position yourself at a wooden table as he sprinkles in dried fennel seeds, mint leaves, and something called feverfew, which sounds simultaneously helpful and slightly judgmental. You begin grinding. The pestle presses into the bowl with a soft crunch, releasing fragrant oils that rise into the air like a calming cloud. It's strangely relaxing, almost like you're giving a tiny massage to the history of medicine. The monk nods approvingly. "Many ailments," he says, "can be eased with herbs if treated early. Not solved perhaps, but eased." Here comes your 11th major historical fact. Medieval monastic infirmaries were centers of practical medicine, preserving herbal knowledge that might otherwise have been lost during turbulent centuries. Monks recorded remedies for fevers, wounds, stomach pains, melancholy, and even insomnia, though their sleep cures often involved warm milk, prayer, and sometimes wine. You glance briefly toward a jar labeled Vinum Somniculorum Sleep Wine. Tempting. A monk nearby is preparing a poultice, carefully mixing crushed willow bark into a paste. Willow contains salicin, the ancestor of aspirin, one of nature's more generous coincidences. He spreads the paste onto cloth with calm precision. Another monk is checking the pulse of an elderly brother, counting quietly while his patient smiles faintly, half asleep. The infirmary feels peaceful, like a warm hand resting on a tired shoulder. And now your obscure tidbit arrives. Some monasteries believed singing could aid healing. So infirmary monks sometimes hummed psalms while tending to patients. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a soft vibration in the air, meant to soothe both body and spirit. As you grind herbs, you hear a monk humming gently from across the room. The sound warms you more than the sunlight on your sleeves. Your guide gestures for you to bring the ground mixture to a small cauldron simmering over a brazier. He adds a splash of water, a pinch of salt, and stirs with a wooden spoon. The mixture bubbles quietly, filling the room with a minty, earthy scent. "This will ease stomach discomfort," he says. "Not cure, but ease." He stresses this again, as if fully aware that medieval remedies had a success rate best described as hopeful. You ladle a little into a cup, feeling oddly proud of your potion-making skills. A monk takes it to a patient who sits propped on pillows, pale but smiling. You watch quietly as he drinks, offering a small nod of gratitude. Your guide rests a hand gently on your arm. "Healing is slow," he says, "but kindness is quick." The words settle into you like warm tea. For the next while, you help with tasks that feel both simple and sacred: folding linens, sorting herbs by scent and texture, placing warm cloths on aching joints, and fetching clean water from a pitcher nearly as heavy as your intentions. The infirmary hums softly, not busy, but alive. The monks move with practiced gentleness. Patients breathe in slow, steady rhythms. Historians still debate how effective monastic medicine truly was. Some claim monasteries preserved sophisticated herbal knowledge, while others argue that luck and fresh air did most of the work. The truth likely lies somewhere in the middle, wrapped in a poultice of good intentions. You pause near a window, letting the warm breeze touch your face. The outside world looks peaceful. Garden paths, stone walls, the distant movement of monks tending their morning tasks. Then comes a soft clang from the brazier. The monk stirring a tonic calls you over. "Smell this," he says. You lean in. It's sharp, herbal, slightly bitter like a tea that wants to discipline you. "It clears the breath," he explains. "Useful in cold months." You imagine winter in the monastery, frost on the cloister arches, chilled stone floors, monks wrapped in heavy wool. Suddenly, herbal steam sounds like a miracle. Your guide prepares a small bundle of herbs wrapped in cloth. "For the head," he says, "warm it and rest it on the brow." You help him carry it to a patient who looks weary but peaceful, adjusting the cloth gently on his forehead. He exhales a long, grateful breath that feels like a blessing passing through you. Moments like these make the monastery feel more human, more tender than you expected. Beneath all the silence, structure, and ritual, there's a steady heartbeat of compassion. Eventually, a bell rings in the courtyard, soft, steady, marking the transition to late morning. Your guide smiles. It is time for the next task. He leads you toward the doorway. You take one last look around the infirmary, the herbs, the warmth, the gentle hum of care, and step back into the cool corridor. The monastery feels different now, bright and alive with the fullness of day. As you walk, your guide says, "You have done well. After work comes study." You're heading toward the library, the quiet heart of knowledge, the sanctuary within the sanctuary. Your next chapter begins between shelves of ancient parchment and whispered wisdom. The corridor narrows as you follow your guide toward a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron bands. It looks less like an entrance, and more like the lid of a treasure chest, one that squeaks politely when opened. Inside, the air is cooler than the rest of the monastery, carrying the unmistakable scent of parchment, ink, beeswax, and quiet ambition. This is the library. Not grand, not towering, not the kind of place Hollywood would call medieval, but real, lived in, and quietly powerful. Light filters through narrow windows, casting soft gold across rows of wooden shelves. Manuscripts rest, on them like sleeping animals, each one bound in leather, some smooth, some cracked, some reinforced with clasps that click shut like ancient secrets. A monk at a reading desk looks up, nods, and returns to his work, copying a faded text with slow, reverent strokes. Another monk sorts manuscripts according to subject matter: theology, grammar, herbal remedies, astronomy, the polite medieval kind, and a section simply labelled Miscellanea, which is where the really interesting things tend to hide. "Welcome," your guide whispers, though whispering is not required here. The library seems to inspire it on its own. This is where we keep memory safe. You step between the shelves. The dust motes drift in warm shafts of light. The air feels heavier, but not oppressively so, rather like you've stepped into a room filled with listening. Your guide gestures toward an empty desk. "You may read," he says. "Choose something simple, something kind." You look at the shelf, closest to you, and pull out a manuscript bound in dark leather. It's heavier than it looks. The cover smells faintly of smoke and old stories. You open it carefully. The pages thick, creamy, slightly uneven rustle like soft leaves. Inside, the script is tight, elegant, and clearly written by someone with a lifelong commitment to neatness. It's a collection of short moral tales, each one blending wisdom, dry humor, and the kind of life advice that assumes you will spend most of your time praying or farming. You read a story about a farmer who argues with a fox over stolen chickens. Then another about a monk who tries to meditate under a tree but is repeatedly interrupted by falling acorns. You smile. You didn't expect medieval manuscripts to contain such relatable frustration. Your 12th major historical fact arrives naturally. Monasteries served as the intellectual centers of medieval Europe, preserving ancient texts, copying new ones, and housing knowledge that might otherwise have disappeared. Their libraries were the quiet engines of learning. A monk approaches and sets a small manuscript beside you. "This one," he murmurs, "is for guests." You open it. Inside are short prayers, herbal notes, and small poems written by monks long gone. One reads, "Be patient with the dawn. She does not hurry for kings nor beggars, yet all find her in time." You sit with that line for a moment, feeling it settle gently into your chest. A shuffling sound draws your attention. A young monk enters, carrying a stack of manuscripts far too tall for his height. He wobbles dangerously, writes himself, then nearly bumps into a shelf. A senior monk swoops in like a silent guardian angel, steadying the stack with one hand and giving the young man a look that says, "Good enthusiasm, questionable strategy." And now, your obscure tidbit. Some monasteries use chains to secure valuable books, attaching them to desks to prevent loss. Not because monks were thieves, but because books were wealth. A single handwritten manuscript could take months or years to produce. Losing one was like losing a fortune. You glance around. Sure enough, a few books have chains fixed to their bindings, thin iron links attached to brass rings, anchored to the lecterns. They look a little dramatic, but also quite justified. As the monks work, the library fills with soft sounds. The scratch of quills, the turning of pages, the muted thump of a book closing gently. The quiet is not silence, it's a living hush, like the room itself is breathing slowly. You continue reading. Another poem catches your eye. Walk gently through the day, for your footsteps write on the dust of the world. You place the book down for a moment, letting the words drift through you. Historians still debate how widely monks read outside religious texts, whether they sought knowledge purely for devotion or for curiosity, or a mix of both. But watching them here, bent over pages with quiet fervor, it's hard not to feel that curiosity was very much alive in this place. Your guide returns with a small smile. "There is work to do," he says softly, "but study is also work, and this work feeds the mind." You close the manuscript carefully. Your fingers linger on the warm leather. You realize you could stay here for hours, days, maybe even years, reading, copying, learning, existing within the soft heartbeat of preserved wisdom. But the day is moving on. The sun has shifted, sending new light across the shelves. Shadows stretch and curl like sleepy cats along the floor. The guide leads you toward the exit. Before you leave, he pauses beside a particularly tall shelf. "Remember this place," he says. "Here, days do not pass. They accumulate." Outside, the courtyard is bright again. The scent of herbs and warm stone returns, A faint breeze brushes your face. You've spent your morning in the quiet cradle of memory. Now, the monastery has a different task. For you, something practical, physical, grounding. Your guide smiles. It is nearly time for the midday meal, he says. But before that, a small task in the garden. You follow him, ready to step back into sunlight, soil, and the calm rhythm of living things. The monastery garden waits for you like a gentle exhale, green, warm, alive in a way that feels entirely different from the quiet gravity of the library. Stepping outside, you blink as sunlight spills across the courtyard, brighter now, carrying the faint scent of rosemary and warm stone. Your guide leads you down a narrow path between orderly herb beds. Bees drift lazily from flower to flower, unbothered by prayer schedules or responsibilities. A few monks are already at work, kneeling in the dirt, trimming branches, whispering to seedlings in that way people do when they forget they're doing it. This, your guide says, is where we help the earth help us. He hands you a small wooden rake, smooth from years of use. The handle fits comfortably in your palm, like it remembers the hands before yours. Your task is simple. Loosen the soil around the lavender bushes, so air can reach the roots. You kneel, feeling the warmth of the ground seep into your legs, and begin combing through the dirt with slow, steady strokes. The soil is soft, fragrant, and full of tiny roots, weaving like quiet secrets beneath the surface. The lavender releases its scent as you disturb the ground fresh, calming, the kind of smell that feels like someone brushing dust off your thoughts. Your guide kneels beside you with the grace of someone who has accepted knee pain as a permanent life companion. Plants teach patience, he murmurs. They grow in silence, and only when they are ready. Here comes your 13th major historical fact. Monasteries cultivated extensive herb gardens, not just for food and medicine, but for ink making, cloth dyeing, and brewing. Each plant had a purpose, sometimes several, and monks knew their uses with astonishing detail. As you work the soil, a monk approaches carrying a small basket of seedlings, young sage plants, their leaves soft and fuzzy. He places the basket beside you, bows slightly, and continues down the path without a word. Your guide smiles. You plant them, he says. You dig a small hollow, place a seedling inside, and pat the dirt around it with the tenderness of someone tucking in a baby chick. The process is surprisingly soothing. You plant another, and another. Each one tiny, vulnerable, hopeful. Monks pass by occasionally, one carrying a bucket of water with both hands, another snipping mint with the focus of someone performing delicate surgery. A chicken wanders into the garden, pecking the ground with suspicious intensity. You glance at your guide. He sighs. They are not allowed in here, he whispers. The chicken stares at him, deeply unbothered. You shoo it gently. It moves 2 steps, then resumes pecking. Your guide gives up with the resigned grace of a man who knows which battles are unwinnable. And now your obscure tidbit for the day. Some monasteries believed that certain herbs could absorb negative thoughts if tended with prayer, especially sage and rue. These plants were sometimes referred to as quiet keepers or mind clearers. You glance at your newly planted sage, feeling oddly proud of its future potential to absorb medieval anxiety. The sun climbs higher, warming your shoulders. The garden hums with life, bees buzzing, leaves rustling, water splashing from wooden ladles. You settle into the peaceful rhythm of the work, feeling your breath match the movements of your hands. Historians still debate whether these gardens were primarily medicinal, spiritual, or agricultural. But watching the monks interact with them, you feel the answer is simple. They were all 3. A monastery garden is a kind of living prayer. A monk gestures for you to help carry a bundle of cut herbs, lavender, mint, basil, and a few stems of something lemony back to the kitchen. You lift the bundle, inhaling its warm fragrance, and follow him along the stone path. Inside the kitchen, the air is filled with bubbling pots and warm bread aromas. A cook monk thanks, pay you with a soft smile, and begins sorting the herbs into bowls. These, he says, holding up the mint, are for tea. He gestures toward the basil. And these for flavor. Then he holds up a sprig of rosemary. And this is for Brother Thomas's memory, which needs constant assistance. You're not entirely sure he's joking. He might not be sure, either. The midday bell rings outside, clear, warm, unmistakable. It signals the approach of sext, the noon prayer. Your guide ushers you back toward the cloister. The sun lights every archway, turning each shadow into a soft blue echo. Inside the church, the monks gather again. Their footsteps form a quiet procession of dust-softened taps. Sext is shorter than the earlier offices, simple, steady, shaped by the rising heat of the day. The chants drift lightly, like warm air rising off sunlit earth. You sit, breathing in the cool of the church, letting the music wash over you. Your body is pleasantly tired, but not strained. Your mind is quieter than it was yesterday. Your pulse feels slower, more ancient. The chant ends, gentle and brief. The monks bow, then file out toward the refectory for the midday meal. Food. Finally. Your stomach rumbles with a sound that echoes slightly too loudly in the nave, earning one amused glance from a monk who clearly remembers his own novice days. You follow the group, stepping into the bright courtyard once more. The scent of stew drifts from the refectory, warm, savory, promising. You walk toward it, guided by hunger, sunlight, and the soft satisfaction of a morning spent tending to things that grow slowly. Your second meal of the day awaits. The refectory doors stand open, letting out a wave of warm, fragrant air that wraps around you like an invisible invitation. Part stew, part bread, part the soft hum of a community settling into its shared meal. You step inside and instantly feel the calm deepen. The room is brighter at midday than it was last night, sunlight pouring through high windows and striking the wooden tables in wide, golden slants. Monks gather in quiet lines, their robes brushing lightly as they move. The atmosphere is peaceful, not solemn, not heavy, just softened. The kind of mood produced by a morning filled with chanting, reading, gardening, and exactly zero arguments about who left dishes in the sink. You take your place at the table. A monk carries in a pot of stew, the earthy aroma of lentils, onions, carrots, and herbs rising like a warm sigh off the surface. Another monk slices thick pieces of brown bread, the knife moving with rhythmic precision. Before anyone lifts a spoon, a short prayer is spoken, a simple gratitude for the food, the labor behind it, and the day continuing in steady rhythm. You bow your head, feeling an odd swell of appreciation for simplicity, for hunger, for the way the sunlight makes the wooden table glow. Then the meal begins. You dip your spoon into the stew. It's hearty, comforting, and suspiciously familiar herbs you helped gather earlier swirl through the broth. The sage adds a warmth that settles deep in your chest. The mint is subtle, but bright, like a gentle nudge to stay awake. Your 14th major historical fact arrives with your second spoonful. Monasteries often ate nearly identical meals every day. Lentil stews, vegetable pottages, coarse breads, occasionally fish. The monotony wasn't punishment. It was meant to foster gratitude and remove distraction. You chew your bread thoughtfully. You're starting to understand the appeal. There's a kind of freedom in not expecting excitement from a meal. A monk at the front of the room reads aloud from a manuscript, something reflective, gentle, and moral, without being overbearing. Today's reading recounts a story about a fisherman who learns humility from a storm and gratitude from a seagull. The metaphors come gently, like soft waves on a shore. Meanwhile, the monks eat in contemplative silence. Spoons clink quietly, bread breaks softly. Someone coughs once and immediately looks like he mentally apologized to every saint within earshot. You glance down the table and notice that a monk is making hand gestures again. Ah, the monastic sign language. He taps his thumb against his palm twice. Your guide leans over and whispers, "That means more stew. Useful." You're tempted to try it, but for now, you stay modest. An obscure tidbit drifts into your mind with the steam. Some monasteries had a strict rule to avoid eye contact during meals, believing it kept the mind focused and reduced the temptation to communicate. Meals were meant to nourish the body, while the reading nourished the spirit. You try looking only at your stew. You feel extremely monk-like for 3 whole seconds. A monk nearby tears bread and dips it methodically. His movements are so steady and practiced he could probably do it in total darkness. Maybe he has. Historians still debate whether monks genuinely appreciated this silent mealtime, or whether many internally sang little songs, or narrated their thoughts dramatically, just to stay entertained. You suspect a bit of both. The meal ends with the soft closing of the reader's book. A final prayer is spoken. Then the room exhales just a tiny shift, the quiet equivalent of stretching your legs after a long car ride. Monks rise gracefully and begin clearing the tables with fluid efficiency. Bowls are stacked, crumbs brushed away. The huge pot of stew carried off like a sacred relic of lunchtime. You follow the flow of movement out of the refectory and back into the sunlight. The courtyard feels warmer now, buzzing with midday stillness. Birds perch along the rooftops, their chirps bright and unashamed, oblivious to the monastery's careful use of silence. Your guide meets you under the cloister arch. "You have eaten well," he says. "Now, a short rest." A rest? The idea is glorious. But in monastic terms, rest does not mean napping on a sun-warmed bench while bees hum lullabies. It means quiet contemplation, sitting or walking gently, letting the mind settle like sediment drifting to the bottom of a clear pool. You walk slowly along the cloister walkway. The arches cast alternating patterns of light and shadow across the stone floor like the monastery's own sundial. The air is hot but not uncomfortable. A faint breeze carries the scent of thyme from the garden. You sit on a stone bench, close your eyes, feel the sun warming your face. The world drifts softly around you. A few monks walk past with calm purpose. Some sit nearby, hands folded, gazing peacefully at nothing in particular. The quiet is not empty, it's full of small, present moments. A thought comes to you. Your mind has spent the whole morning doing things slowly, reading slowly, writing slowly, tending slowly, eating slowly. Even breathing feels slower now. And somehow, impossibly, you don't miss the rush. Your guide approaches after a while. "We return to work," he says gently. "The afternoon is long but generous." You rise from the bench, your legs feel rested. Your mind feels strangely buoyant, as if the silence has smoothed out some of its usual wrinkles. The sun is beginning to tilt, casting longer shadows across the courtyard. Your guide smiles softly. "It is time," he says, "to learn a different kind of labor." He turns toward a large building near the orchard, a place where the smell of wood and wool drifts from open windows. The workshop awaits. The workshop greets you with a different rhythm than anywhere else in the monastery. A warm, steady hum of hands shaping the day's work. When you step inside, the air smells of fresh-cut wood, lanolin from raw wool, beeswax polish, and a faint hint of iron. Sunlight filters through wide windows, illuminating dust motes that drift like tiny, contemplative stars. Benches line the walls, each one dedicated to a craft: woodworking, candle-making, textile work, simple repairs. Monks move slowly, but with purpose, their hands sure and steady, their expressions focused in the way of people who can spend 3 hours smoothing a beam and call it a delightful afternoon. Your guide leads you to a small work table where tools are neatly arranged. Chisels, scrapers, a wooden plane, a soft cloth, and a beam of cedar wood that smells like a forest caught mid-prayer. "We shape wood today," he says gently. You nod as if this is something you do regularly and not something you've mostly seen in calming YouTube videos at 2 a.m. He places the beam before you. "Smooth it," he instructs, handing you the plane. Slow strokes. Think of silence becoming shape. You grip the plane, surprisingly heavier than expected, and draw it along the wood's surface. A thin curl of cedar peels away, falling gracefully to the floor like a delicate scroll. Not bad. Not good, either. But not catastrophic. You try again. This time, the plane glides more smoothly, whispering along the grain. Your guide nods with that subtle monkish approval that feels like winning a tiny, quiet award. Here comes your 15th major historical fact. Monasteries were centers of craftsmanship, producing furniture, candles, shoes, wool garments, tools, and sometimes even musical instruments. Skilled monks often became known for specific crafts, passing their techniques quietly from one generation to the next. Around you, the room unfolds in gentle industry. A monk near the window whittles a wooden spoon, chips falling like soft rain around his feet. Another spins wool on a simple spindle, fingers dancing between strands with practiced grace. 2 more dip candle wicks into melted beeswax, letting each layer cool before dipping again, slow, repetitive, meditative. The whole workshop feels like a living lullaby of movement. Your wood shaving curls beautifully now, falling onto a small pile that smells like a cedar grove. You slide the plane again and again, your body settling into a rhythm you didn't know you were capable of. Then you glance at the monk next to you. His beam is perfectly smooth, perfectly shaped, perfectly everything. Yours looks like a before photo in a woodworking tutorial. But he smiles gently and says, "It took me 20 years to learn the grain of wood." You laugh quietly. He raises an eyebrow, amused, not disapproving. "Laughter is allowed," he whispers, "as long as you do not interrupt the peace of another's work." Your obscure tidbit for the day arrives with the scent of beeswax. Some monasteries had a specific rule requiring monks to practice crafts with inner silence, meaning they weren't allowed to let frustration spill into their movements. Dropping tools, sighing dramatically, or muttering complaints could earn gentle correction. Craft was meant to train the spirit as much as the hands. You grip the plane again, now determined not to let your inner monologue leak out as audible suffering. A monk across the room is carving a decorative border into a wooden chest. The pattern is intricate spirals, tiny leaves, tiny animals that look suspiciously like smug squirrels. You wonder if he's expressing deep philosophical symbolism, or just had a long winter with too much free time. Your guide hands you a cloth. "Now," he says, "polish." You rub the cloth across the surface of your board, the wood warming under your touch, the grain rising softly like the lines of a landscape. The sheen brightens slowly, the cedar smell deepens. The board begins to look, actually quite nice, respectable, potentially usable by someone with low standards but good intentions. Historians still debate whether monastic workshops were primarily for practical needs or for spiritual discipline. But watching these monks now, the answer feels simple. Work is prayer here. Every scrape, cut, dip, and stitch is an act of patience. After a while, your hands warm, your mind quiets, and your breath settles into a slow, even pattern. The workshop's rhythm becomes your rhythm. A bell rings faintly in the distance. Low, steady, neither urgent nor demanding. It signals late afternoon. Monks begin tidying their stations with practiced care. Tools are wiped clean, boards stacked neatly, wax cooled, wool gathered into baskets. You run a final pass of the cloth along your wooden plank, feeling a surprising swell of pride. It's not flawless, but it carries your concentration, your patience, your effort. Your guide inspects it, lifts it gently, and nods. "Good," he says. "Very good. You worked with quiet. It feels like the highest compliment available in a monastery. You help sweep the floor, gathering curls of wood that smell sweet and golden." The workshop settles, quieting like a forest at dusk. Outside, the sun has softened into amber, casting long shadows across the orchard and turning the cloister stones warm underfoot. As you step out of the workshop, the sky glows in late afternoon serenity. You feel light, grounded, pleasantly tired from honest work. Your guide walks beside you. "Supper comes soon," he says, "but first prayer." You head once more toward the church, passing through the cloister sounds of distant footsteps, rustling robes, and the soft coo of doves gathering under the roof beams. The day is shifting toward evening, and so are you. Your next hour will be held by prayer, candlelight, and the hush of monks settling into the final stretch of their long, steady day. The sun dips low as you walk toward the church, its golden light brushing the cloister walls in long, honeyed strokes. Evening is gathering not suddenly, not dramatically, but with a quiet patience that seems perfectly in tune with monastic life. You feel it in your steps, in your breathing, in the gentle exhaustion settling into your shoulders like a soft shawl. A few monks drift toward the church ahead of you, their robes swaying with slow, unhurried rhythm. Others join from side paths, converging in a silent procession that feels almost like a tide drawing inward. The bell rings once deep warm, a sound that melts into the stone rather than echoing from it. This is Vespers, the evening prayer, a settling, a smoothing of the day's creases. Inside, the church is lit by a fresh row of candles, their flames dancing gently along the choir stalls. The air is cooler now, touched with the evening's first shadows. You take your place once more, feeling the wood beneath you warm where the sun reached, cool where it didn't. The service begins with a soft antiphon, sung by a monk whose voice holds that unmistakable evening timbre, low, resonant, carrying a hint of contented fatigue. Other voices join, layering into a sound that feels like soft waves curling onto a quiet shore. Your 16th major historical fact arrives smoothly. Vespers was one of the most beloved daily services in many monastic orders, often featuring longer psalms and more elaborate chants, as if the monks poured the last of their waking energy into offering the day back to God. As you listen, the chants wash over you in long, steady currents. Your mind unwinds, your shoulders lower another inch, your breath lengthens. Sunlight fades slowly through the stained glass windows, the colors softening from jewel tones into dusky watercolors. Gold turns amber, then rose, then a quiet, gentle grey. A monk steps forward to read a passage, his voice calm, warm, carrying the weight of a day well lived. He speaks of humility, patience, and gratitude for labor. The words settle around you like a blanket. You notice a small flicker at the edge of your vision. A candle sputters, shoots up a tiny spark, then steadies again. The monk beside you glances toward it with the calm anxiety of someone who has seen far too many candle-related near disasters. Your obscure tidbit of this hour arrives with that flicker. Some monasteries assigned a specific monk called the Custos Lucinae, the guardian of the lamps, whose job was to watch candles during evening prayers to prevent fires. Monasteries burned down more often than anyone liked to admit, and evening services were the most candle-heavy. You try not to look like someone who absolutely would have knocked over a candle by accident in the 12th century. The chant resumes gentler now, like a lullaby for the monastery itself. You feel a heaviness in your limbs. Not unpleasant, just honest. The day has been long, full, deep. Historians still debate whether monks truly enjoyed Vespers, or whether their tired bodies simply resigned themselves to peaceful acceptance. But here, now, the peace feels tangible, like the air itself is humming softly. The final psalm rises slowly, a smooth ascending melody that feels like the sun bowing its head. The harmonies close around you, warm and glowing. Then silence, not empty alive. The monks bow, rising, again with slow, unified motion. You follow them out of the church. Outside, evening has fully settled. The sky is a deepening blue, streaked with orange dissolving into purple. Birds quiet down. Crickets begin their careful tuning. The breeze cools, carrying the scent of earth that has given the day its warmth. You walk through the cloister toward the refectory again, the arches echoing soft footsteps. A few monks exchange small, peaceful smiles, tiny acknowledgements of a labor shared and a day nearly done. The refectory glows with candlelight as supper is prepared. The hum of quiet activity drifts from inside. But before you reach it, your guide touches your arm. "There is something to see first," he whispers. He leads you around the corner of the cloister toward a small alcove where a stone basin stands filled with cool water. Above it hangs a wooden board with simple carvings: water, hands, light. "This," he says softly, "is where we cleanse before the final meal. Not just hands, thoughts too." You dip your hands into the water. It's cold, startling but refreshing. As you lift your hands, droplets shimmer in the fading light, like tiny liquid stars. Your guide nods, satisfied. You are ready. You turn back toward the refectory. The air fills with the warm aroma of vegetable broth, onions softening over low heat, bread cooling on a wooden board. Your stomach stirs. Your mind softens. Your steps slow. Vespers has lowered the volume of the world. Now evening's gentle nourishment awaits. The last meal of the day is about to begin. The refectory glows like a lantern in the deepening dusk, its tall windows catching the last streaks of fading sunlight. You step inside, and the familiar warmth wraps around you, the mingled aromas of simmered vegetables, baked bread, and a hint of herbs drifting from the kitchen hearth. Evening meals in the monastery are quieter than the others, if that's even possible. The monks file in with slow, restful movements, as though the day has gently sanded down the sharp edges of everyone's energy. Robes whisper across the floor. Bowed heads lower into prayer. The room settles into a sacred hush. You take your seat at the long wooden table. Candles flicker softly, not in competition with daylight now, but as its gentle substitute. Their warm glow dances over stone walls, and casts halos on every bowl and loaf. The prayer is short, warm, spoken with the tone of people who have worked hard and are grateful for even simple food. When it ends, supper begins, not rushed, not ceremonious, but with the slow comfort of routine. Tonight's meal is lighter than midday, a thin vegetable broth, a small slice of bread, and a modest portion of soft cheese. Enough to settle the body, not enough to weigh it down. Your 17th major historical fact arrives with your first sip. Many monastic rules encouraged light evening meals. Believing heavy food close to sleep could disrupt rest or encourage worldly dreams. The logic was spiritual, though your digestive system might also approve. You cradle the wooden bowl in your hands. The broth is warm, simple, surprisingly soothing onions, leeks, a hint of thyme, and the faint but familiar taste of garden vegetables pulled fresh from the earth. The bread is still slightly warm. The cheese is firm, salty, and blissfully normal. A monk at the lectern reads softly from a book of reflections, stories about patience, charity, and the importance of forgiving small annoyances before sleep. One anecdote describes the monk who repeatedly tripped over the same step in the cloister for 15 years before confessing his frustration, only to learn that everyone else had been tripping on it too, but never mentioned it. You see several monks shift subtly, perhaps making mental lists of things they, too, can quietly forgive. Your obscure tidbit for this hour arrives with perfect timing. Some monasteries believed it was spiritually dangerous to go to sleep with lingering irritation, so evenings often included quiet gestures of reconciliation, small nods, shared glances, even light touches on the arm to say, "All is peaceful between us." You notice two monks exchange such a gesture now, a brief clasp of hands, a soft smile, no words, just peace. The meal continues in measured silence. Spoons clink faintly. Bread crusts crack softly. The reader's voice drifts across the room like a warm current. A faint sound interrupts the quiet. A monk clearing his throat very softly, trying desperately not to draw attention. He fails. 3 nearby monks glance subtly in his direction. Your guide leans toward you and whispers. Some sounds are unintentional, but still tragic. His eyes sparkle with humor. Historians still debate whether monks truly enjoyed these silent meals, or whether some sat there composing full internal monologues, dramatic soliloquies, or imaginary conversations with the bread. The truth is likely somewhere in between. You finish your broth and wipe the last crumbs of bread from your bowl. The reader closes his book with a soft thump. A final prayer is offered shorter than the others, almost like a lullaby to close the day. Then the monks rise, slowly, peacefully, purposefully. They clean the tables with quiet efficiency. Bowls stacked, benches pushed neatly back, candles trimmed. The refectory empties like a tide going out unhurried, leaving behind only warmth and the faint scent of herbs. Outside, night has fully settled. A deep velvet sky arches overhead, dotted with stars that look clearer here than anywhere else. The cool evening air brushes your face, carrying the smell of distant wood smoke and freshly turned earth. Your guide stands beside you, hands folded in front of him. The day is nearly done, he says softly. One last gathering remains. Compline. You remember it from last night, the final unraveling, the soft descent into rest. But before you return to the church, your guide leads you into the cloister garden. The moon has risen, pale and round above the monastery walls. The herbs appear silver in the moonlight. The lavender sways gently, releasing its nighttime perfume. Breathe, he says. So you do. The air is cool and fragrant, pulling the last remnants of the day from your shoulders. A monk passes carrying a single candle, heading toward the church, the flame protected by his hand, the glow soft enough to look like a floating star. Soon, the great silence will begin. You feel it already, settling around the monastery like a long, calm exhale. Your guide nods toward the church door. It is time, he murmurs. You walk with him, each step slow, steady, softened by the scent of night and the dim shimmer of candlelight. The day is closing. The peace is deepening. Your place in the rhythm of monastic life feels steadier, familiar now, almost natural. Compline awaits, and then sleep, held by the hush of ancient stone and the gentle weight of night. The church greets you with deeper shadows than before. its aisles washed in dim candlelight that flickers like soft breathing against the stone. The monks move inside with the quiet assurance of people who have repeated these steps more times than they've counted sunrises. You step into your familiar place in the choir stall, feeling the wood warm under your palms despite the coolness of night. The candles glow brighter in the darkness, their flames bending slightly with each movement in the room. A monk places a fresh taper on the lectern, and the tiny spark of the new flame feels like the official opening of the monastery's nighttime heart. Then the bell rings, one slow, resonant note. It's softer than the earlier bells, touched by night, but it still moves through the air with purpose, like someone gently closing a thick book. The sound fades, then quiet settles so deep you feel it inside your bones. This is Compline, the final prayer of the day, the doorway to the great silence. A monk steps forward, his voice low and warm. Grant us a peaceful night and a perfect end. The chant begins. Slow, measured, calm enough to make your eyelids feel heavy. Tonight's chant feels different than yesterday's, gentler, as if shaped by the long day behind it. The notes hover in the church like floating strands of warm thread, weaving themselves into the stillness. The voices of the monks blend into one soft river of sound, full of tenderness and pale moonlight. Your 18th major historical fact unfolds quietly, here. In many medieval orders, Compline involved confession of the day's smallest faults, a whispered admission of impatience, distraction, or minor rule-breaking, so that no monk carried guilt into sleep. Here, the confession is brief and communal, spoken softly. No one looks around, no one watches. Everyone simply lets the words drift like dust into the candlelight. You feel something inside, you loosen a small knot you didn't realize you carried. It dissolves in the silence. The monks bow their heads for a psalm. The melody rises and falls like waves, slow and rhythmic. You follow its curve with your breath. Inhale on the rise, exhale on the fall. The pattern becomes a lullaby for your thoughts. Then comes your obscure tidbit of Compline. Some monasteries believed that after Compline, angels stood watch over the dormitory, guarding the monks' dreams. Because of this, many sang an antiphon to Mary or Michael before leaving the church, a kind of spiritual goodnight. Sure, enough. A monk steps forward and begins the antiphon. The melody is simple, beautiful, small enough to hold in your hands, large enough to fill the whole church with warmth. The chant ends. A hush lingers. The great silence begins. Now no words will be spoken until dawn. This silence is not empty or restrictive, it's protective, like a soft blanket laid over the monastery's shoulders. The monks rise. Their robes move softly against the floor. Candles sway. Shadows ripple along the stone like gentle water. You walk out with them, your steps quieter than last night, as if your body already knows the rhythm. Outside, the night is full, deep, expansive, dotted with stars that look close enough to touch if you were just a little taller. The courtyard glows faintly with moonlight, turning every herb leaf into a tiny silver lantern. You breathe in. The air feels clearer than any night you remember. The monks walk toward the dormitory. Not in a line, not in disarray, just in a shared direction, like a flock of birds gliding through midnight. Their silence feels communal, warm, protective. Inside the dormitory, the candles burn low. Beds rest in neat rows, straw mattresses tucked with care. A faint scent of beeswax and wool lingers in the air. You find your bed again. Your blanket is cool at first, but warms quickly with your body's weight. The old wood creaks softly beneath you, less a complaint, more a welcome. You lie down. A monk moves down the aisle, extinguishing candles one by one. Each snuffed flame folds the room deeper into darkness, until only a faint bluish glow from the window remains. Another historical mystery drifts across your mind. Historians still debate whether monks slept deeply during these segmented nights, or simply drifted through light cycles, rising for matins, and returning to a half-sleep afterward. But here, wrapped in the stillness, you suspect sleep came easily to many. You adjust your thin pillow. Your limbs sink into the straw mattress. Your breathing slows naturally this time. No effort needed. The dormitory becomes a shared breath. Soft, slow, even. Your guide's bed is near yours. In the faint moonlight, you see him glance your way and give the smallest nod, barely a movement, but full of warmth. A silent wish for a peaceful night. Outside, A night breeze stirs the herbs. A distant owl calls once, then falls quiet again. The monastery holds its breath in a silence that feels ancient and tender. Your eyes close. Your thoughts drift. Sleep rises to meet you like a calm tide. This night is deep. This silence is holy. And tomorrow, quiet as dawn itself, will come soon enough. You wake slowly, as if floating up from the warm, dark water of sleep. The dormitory is dim, lit only by the first thin threads of dawn creeping through the small windows. A faint chill rests on your blanket, and the soft sounds of monks rising, rustling wool, shifting straw. Gentle footsteps move through the room like a whispered wave. No bell yet. Not this moment. This is the quiet before the quiet ends. You sit up, stretching your back with the soft crackle of joints that have spent the night negotiating with a medieval mattress. The scent of wool and cool stone fills your lungs, and for a moment you feel suspended between two worlds. The modern life far away, and the ancient, a steady rhythm you've been living in for nearly 2 full days now. Then, the bell rings. Low, measured, patient. The sound floats through the air like a slow breath filling the monastery's chest. You rise with the monks and follow the familiar procession through the corridor. The floor is cool beneath your feet. Your robe swishes against your legs. Outside, the air bites lightly at your skin, not harshly, just enough to remind you that morning is a fresh beginning, not a gentle continuation. The cloister is painted in muted pre-sunlight colors, blue, silver, and soft grey. A few stars still cling faintly to the sky, reluctant to leave their night shift. Birdsong begins timidly, one chirp here, one chirp there, until it settles into a soft chorus. Inside the church, the candles burn with small, steady flames, as though they, too, are shaking off sleep. The monks slip into their stalls in near silent unison, and you follow suit. The first chant of the morning begins quiet, tender, like a whisper waking from a dream. The melodies rise slowly, brushing against the stones, winding through the arches like soft threads drawn through fabric. Your 19th major historical fact rises with the sound. Monastic days were measured not by clocks, but by canonical hours, each one marked by prayer, creating a steady, predictable structure that guided the entire rhythm of life. For many monks, time wasn't something to control, but something to flow with. You listen, letting the chant anchor you to the morning. It feels familiar now. A soft returning, not a beginning. A monk steps forward to read. His voice is stronger than last night's, warmed by sleep and dawn. The words speak of renewal, humility, and the quiet strength of beginning again without needing fanfare. You inhale deeply. The church smells of old wood, faint incense, and the slight chill of stone that hasn't yet caught the day's warmth. You exhale slowly. Your breath disappears into the hush. The chant resumes brighter, more assured now, echoing with the promise of a new day. And here arrives your obscure tidbit. Some monasteries believed dawn was the hour when heaven was closest to the earth. Not dramatically, not with trumpets, but with a thin veil of clarity. For this reason, monks sometimes walked barefoot to Louds in the warmer months to touch the earth at the hour they believed God touched the world. Your guide, walking 2 stalls over, still wears sandals. It is cold, after all. Even monks adjust their traditions when frost threatens toes. After the final psalm of Louds, the church fills with a brief, tender silence. It lasts only a few breaths, but feels like the pause between heartbeats, a still point in the day's unfolding. The monks rise, their movements soft but efficient. You follow them out into the pale light of early morning. The sky has shifted from grey to a soft rose gold. Dew sparkles across the herb beds. A rooster calls from somewhere near the barn with the confidence of someone who thinks he runs the place. The monks smile at the sound. Some roll their eyes very softly, monastically. Your guide even chuckles under his breath. Walking toward the refectory for the morning meal, you feel a sense of familiarity growing, not just with the schedule, but with the rhythm beneath it. Waking, prayer, work, silence, rest. They're no longer concepts, they're patterns in your breathing. Inside the refectory, breakfast awaits. A bowl of warm porridge, a crust of bread, hot herbal tea, mint and sage, bright and grounding. The meal is short, simple, but deeply comforting. The reader recites a brief passage, a thought about diligence, patience, and the quiet beauty of steady work. The words drift through the room with the steam from the tea. You finish your porridge. You sip the last of your tea, letting it wake you from the inside out. Historians still debate whether monks ever tired of this daily monotony, or whether they found meaning in the repetition. Watching the monks here, the answer seems clear. Meaning is not something they sought outside their tasks. It was something woven into the tasks themselves. Your guide stands. "It is time for work," he says softly, breaking the hush without breaking the peace. You rise and follow him. The sun has cleared the horizon now, washing the monastery in soft gold. Through the arches, you see the scriptorium's windows glowing warmly, the garden beginning to shimmer with morning light, the workshop's chimney releasing a thin curl of wood smoke. But today, your guide leads you down a path you haven't taken yet, past the orchard, past the well, toward a small house near the outer wall, one that looks older, quieter, and dustier than the others. "The archives," he says, "where memory is kept." You step inside. The air is cool and smells faintly of ink, dust, and stories waiting to be touched. Your next task awaits among scrolls, parchments, and quiet whispers of centuries past. The door to the archives is thicker than you expected. Ancient oak, iron hinges, the sort of door that looks like it has outlived several kings and possibly a dragon or two. When your guide pushes it open, it releases a sigh of cool, papery air, fragrant with dust, wax, and quiet centuries. You step inside. The room is dim, but not dark, lit by narrow windows that let in slivers of morning sunlight. Those thin beams float through the dust like little rivers of gold. Shadows stretch across the flagstone floor, long and soft, as though the past prefers not to be disturbed too quickly. Shelves line the walls, uneven with age. Some bow under the weight of rolled scrolls. Some hold stacks of parchment bound loosely with leather straps. Others cradle wooden boxes carved with symbols and initials that have long since slipped out of memory. Your guide's voice drops to a reverent whisper. "This is where we keep what is too old to use and too precious to lose." He leads you deeper. Your footsteps echo lightly, each sound muffled by the thick presence of time. On a central table lie several manuscripts that have seen better centuries. Their bindings are cracked, their ink faded, their edges crumbling into soft flakes. Yet they radiate importance like fragile relics, still humming faintly with intention. "Today," your guide says, "we clean and mend." He hands you a soft cloth, thin as breath, gentle enough not to harm even the most delicate parchment. You pick up a manuscript whose cover feels almost like dry leaves. Very carefully, you wipe the surface, removing centuries of dust, one slow circle at a time. A faint line of script emerges more clearly, black, precise, determined to outlive everyone. Your 20th major historical fact settles into the moment. Medieval monasteries kept archives of charters, letters, land records, and very old manuscripts documents that preserved not just religious texts, but legal agreements, genealogies, and the administrative memory of entire communities. Without monks, much of medieval Europe's history would be a ghost. You continue gently cleaning, the fragile crackle of the parchment revealing itself with every subtle movement. Across the room, two monks examine a scroll written in an early script. They murmur softly, still reverent, still quiet, debating how best to flatten the curl without breaking the fibers. Another monk sits at a desk copying a fragile line of text onto fresh parchment to preserve it. Near him is a small bronze brazier warming a pot of glue, the sticky, amber kind used for binding broken covers or repairing torn corners. The smell of it mingles with the dust in the air, creating a scent that feels both ancient and oddly comforting. You finish cleaning the manuscript's cover and open it slowly. Inside, the ink is faded but legible. A mix of Latin phrases sprawls across each page, interrupted by strange symbols and marginal notes written in shaky but determined hands. Your guide glances over your shoulder. "Ah," he says, "a calendar of storms." You blink. "A what now?" He smiles. In some monasteries, monks recorded the weather each day. For decades. Floods, droughts, winds, eclipses. Your obscure tidbit blooms gently. Medieval monks kept weather logs not for scientific curiosity, but to track patterns they believed were spiritual messages, or at least practical warnings, about crop yields, illness, and seasonal rhythms. You turn a page. There, next to a carefully drawn cloud, someone has written, "Wind strong enough to carry Brother Matthew's hat into the orchard." So much for stoic objectivity. You smile quietly as you continue your careful cleaning. Each page feels like a whispered conversation with someone long gone. A life still speaking across time. Not loudly, not urgently, just gently, like a monk tapping your shoulder in passing. Historians still debate whether monks understood how valuable their record-keeping would become. Some believe they sensed it. Others argue they were simply following rules, unaware that centuries later scholars would pore over their weather notes and marginal doodles with awe. Your guide brings over another manuscript, this one heavier, bound with thick leather. "Try this," he says, but very gently. You lift the cover. It creaks like an old man settling into a wooden chair. Inside are illuminated pages, faded now, but still shimmering faintly with gold leaf and bright pigments. A saint's robe glows with worn-out blue, once made from crushed lapis lazuli, more valuable than silver. "Extraordinary," you whisper. Your guide nods. "It was made before the oldest monk here was born, before his teacher, before the man who taught his teacher." You brush dust from the delicate illumination, revealing small details: a bird perched on a branch, a vine curling into a letter, a tiny face smiling mischievously in the corner. They loved adding humor where they could. Your guide whispers, "Even in holy books, restraint does not forbid joy." You can almost hear the long-gone scribe chuckling softly as he painted that tiny, mischievous face. As you work, the room's hush grows deeper. Not silence, but something richer. A soft hum of reverence. The respect of hands that know they're touching more than parchment. Eventually the bell rings outside, distant, warm. A reminder that time has moved even here. Your guide nods to the manuscripts. "They are grateful," he says simply. You're not sure if he means metaphorically or spiritually. You decide both. You replace the manuscript gently, covering it with a linen cloth. The monks begin to tidy the room. The dust settles. The light shifts into late morning gold. "Come," your guide whispers. "There is one more place I want you to see before the day's labor ends." He leads you out of the archives and down a seldom-used corridor. The air here is cooler, the walls narrower, the silence thicker. At the end of the corridor rests a small iron-bound door. Your guide pushes it open, revealing a stone stairway spiraling downward. "The crypt," he says softly, "where memory sleeps." You inhale slowly, bracing yourself. Not afraid, just aware. This is a different kind of quiet. You step down into the shadows, ready for the monastery's oldest, deepest silence. The stairway curves downward, like a slow descent into the monastery's hidden heartbeat. Each step is cool beneath your feet, colder than any stone you've touched today. The air shifts with every movement, still, heavy, carrying the faint scent of ancient limestone and wax. A small lantern sways in your guide's hand, its glow trembling across the walls. Shadows ripple and stretch. The world above sunlight, herbs, warm bread, chanting feels impossibly far away now. Down here, everything is carved from quiet. When you reach the bottom, the crypt opens around you like a stone sigh. Arched ceilings, thick pillars, dust that moves only when someone breathes. The room is lit only by a few lanterns, giving the stone an amber glow, as if the walls themselves hold a memory of candlelight. Your guide speaks in a whisper that barely disturbs the air. "This place keeps our past, our brothers, our vows." Rows of simple stone slabs line the walls, some with faint inscriptions, others blank, the names long since worn away. A few hold carved crosses, or small symbols that look like personal marks, quiet signatures of lives lived in prayer. You kneel slightly to examine one. The letters are shallow, washed thin by time. Your fingers hover close, never touching. Out of respect, your 21st major historical fact rests here. Monastic crypts often served as burial places for generations of monks, creating a quiet lineage of those who lived, worked, prayed, and died within the same cloister walls. These crypts were seen not as eerie, but as places of continuity linking the living with the past. Your guide moves slowly between the slabs, lantern in hand, casting soft arcs of light. "We do not fear this place," he murmurs. "It is full of peace, not endings." You follow him deeper. A stone alcove holds several wax-sealed jars, documents inside, wrapped in linen. Records so old that even touching them requires ritual and permission. The jars seem to glow in the lantern light, as if safeguarding tiny pieces of eternity. Nearby stands a wooden chest, older than anything else in the room. Its surface is cracked, held together by rusted iron bands. Your guide touches the lid gently. "These hold our earliest charters," he whispers. "The land grants. The writings of abbots whose names we speak only in prayer." Dust floats in the beam of the lantern, swirling like slow galaxies. You feel the silence deep under your ribs, grounding, expansive, and then your obscure tidbit, suited perfectly to this dim sanctuary. Some medieval monks believed the crypt was a place where the boundary between earthly time and sacred time grew thin. They claimed that prayers whispered here carried farther, echoing through ages instead of minutes. You're not sure whether that's metaphor or belief. Down here, metaphor and belief seem to share the same breath. A faint sound reaches your ear, just the softest drip of water from somewhere far in the stone. Not frightening, just a reminder that even rock is slowly alive. Historians still debate whether monks visited crypts regularly or only during feast days, funerals, and certain rituals. Some say monks avoided them, except when required. Others claim crypts were cherished places for meditation, quiet beyond quiet. Your guide leads you to a small alcove at the far end. A single candle burns there. Its flame is steady, almost impossibly so, untouched by drafts. Before it stands a wooden kneeler, worn smooth by countless hours of prayer. "This is where our brothers come in times of decision," he says, "or in times of great trouble." You imagine a monk kneeling here in cold candlelight, seeking clarity not in words, but in silence, in stone, in memory. You step closer. The air feels deeper here, somehow thicker, a hush within a hush. You bow your head, not because anyone tells you to, but because the space seems to ask for it gently. For a breath, or two, or 10, you let the stillness hold you. It's not heavy, not eerie, just pure and old and patient. A silence that doesn't demand anything from you, only offers space. When you finally inhale again, it feels like the air has changed shape. Your guide watches you with soft understanding. Then he gestures toward the stairs. "It is time," he says. "Let the living have your steps again." You follow him upward, the lantern's glow guiding each turn of the stone spiral. With every step, sound returns slowly. Distant birds, faint chatter of wind against the walls, the monastery breathing its daily rhythm. When you emerge into the daylight, the brightness feels almost tender. The sun is lower now, afternoon leaning toward evening. The air smells of warm grass and baking bread drifting from the kitchen. You blink against the light, feeling as though you've stepped out of centuries instead of minutes. Your guide closes the crypt door behind you with gentle reverence. "It is good to remember," he says, "but it is better to keep walking." He leads you back toward the cloister. The arches glow golden. The fountain murmurs softly. Lavender breathes its purple calm into the air. You feel lighter, anchored, quieter than before. The crypt has folded something inside you, a soft understanding of time, of patience, of continuity. The day is not over yet. In fact, the monastery has saved one of its most humbling tasks for last. Your guide gestures toward the laundry house at the far edge of the courtyard. Steam rises from its windows. Cloth flaps gently on nearby lines. He smiles with soft mischief. "Come," he says, "even monks must wash." And so your next chapter begins with warm water, careful hands, and the simple, holy work of cleaning what carries the weight of days. The laundry house sits at the edge of the monastery grounds, half hidden behind rows of drying herbs and fluttering linen. As you approach, you hear the soft, rhythmic splash of water and the rustle of cloth, domestic sounds that feel almost musical after the deep hush of the crypt. Steam curls lazily from the open windows, carrying scents of heated wool, lye soap, lavender, and faint traces of smoke from the stove inside. There's something comforting about it, like stepping into a pocket of warmth, tucked between labor and quiet reflection. Your guide pushes the door open gently, and the warm air envelops you at once, soft and humid. Inside, Several monks work at stone basins, filled with water warmed over a small hearth. Some scrub cloth with slow, patient strokes. Others wring out sleeves and robes with steady precision. A few hang garments on ropes stretched across the ceiling beams. Everyone moves with that distinct monastic rhythm. Efficient, but peaceful. Focused, but unhurried. Your guide hands you a simple tunic, already damp. "Rinse," he says with a small nod. "Rinse with care." You step to an empty basin. The water is warm against your hands almost, soothing. Tiny threads float on the surface like pale wisps. You lift the tunic, immerse it, and press it gently under the water until it darkens fully. Then you rinse and fold, repeating the motion in slow, rhythmic arcs. The cloth releases faint swirls of soap and dust, the day's work dissolving. It feels meditative, almost hypnotic. Your breath starts sinking to the movement. Warm water, cool air on your sleeves, the soft splash of rinsing. Your guide watches quietly for a moment, then steps away to help another monk wring out a heavy wool robe. Your 20-second major historical fact slips into place as naturally as the water laps against the basin. Laundry was a crucial but humble part of monastic life, often overseen by lower-ranking monks or novices. Robes gathered dust, sweat, wax, and soil from daily tasks, and their upkeep was considered a form of service, not glamorous, not optional, but necessary. The gentle humility of it makes sense. After all, holiness does not prevent grime. Across the room, a monk gently soaps a robe, using a bar of lye that looks like it's seen better decades. He scrubs thoughtfully, as if considering the universal struggle of stains. Another monk carefully combs out a length of wool fabric with a wooden carder, preparing it for drying without wrinkles. A third monk works the stove, adding small chips of wood, testing the water temperature with the backs of his fingers. You hear one of the older monks humming a low, nearly inaudible melody. It's not a chant, not a psalm, just a soft tune that keeps time with his hands. Here comes your obscure tidbit. Some monasteries permitted soft humming or breath songs during laundry or manual chores because it helped maintain rhythm without breaking the rule of silence. These tiny melodies were considered useful noise, an exception carved out of practicality. As if on cue, the second monk picks up the same tune, so quietly that it seems more like two thoughts aligning than two voices. You keep rinsing. The water warms your hands. Your shoulders relax. Your mind floats a little. Laundry, you begin to understand, is a strange blend of simplicity and symbolism. It cleans the fabric, yes, but it also represents letting go of the day's weight, scrubbing away mistakes, rinsing out worry, preparing for the next stretch of life with fresh cloth and clear intention. Historians still debate whether monks wrestled internally with boredom during chores like this, or whether the repetitive tasks acted as a balm against restless minds. Watching the monks now quiet, steady, comfortable, you suspect the latter. Your guide returns with a woven basket full of wet garments. "Help us hang these," he says. You follow him outside to the drying lines. The air is cooler here, touched by evening's approach. Sunlight glows in pale gold strips across the courtyard. You help drape robes, tunics, and towels over the ropes. They fall with soft weight, already smelling of lavender and warm stone. A breeze moves through the garden, lifting sleeves and hems like quiet flags. You pause for a moment. The sight is unexpectedly beautiful: monastic robes swaying gently under the open sky, the herb garden breathing its perfume, the walls glowing gold in the dying light. Your guide stands beside you. He speaks softly. There is holiness in small tasks. Even water and cloth can teach us patience. You nod, feeling the truth of it. A monk comes out carrying 2 final robes. He hands one to you, and as you hang it carefully, he offers a tiny smile, a silent thank you for sharing a bit of his daily burden. When the laundry is done, the monks gather the baskets and retreat inside. You and your guide linger for a moment under the lines, letting the breeze cool your damp hands. Somewhere in the distance, the bell tower begins its low, steady call. Evening is nearing again. The rhythm of the day is bending toward its soft close. Your guide turns toward the cloister. "There is one task left," he says, "to ease the mind before supper and prayer." He leads you back toward the orchard. There, under the spreading branches of an apple tree, sits a simple wooden bench. He gestures for you to sit. Rest, he says. Watch the light fade. You do. The sun melts slowly into the horizon. Birds settle in the branches. Shadows stretch across the grass like sleepy limbs. The air cools, carrying the crisp scent of apples and earth. You sit for a long moment, breathing, watching, allowing the simple beauty of evening to loosen whatever remains tight inside you. When your guide finally rises and nods toward the church, you stand with him. The day has rounded its final corner. Compline and the great silence wait just ahead, the last embrace of the night's gentle rhythm. You walk beside him, your steps soft, your mind clear, your heart settled into the steady breathing of the monastery. One more section remains, before your day concludes. The sky dims into a deep violet as you and your guide walk toward the church for the final time. The day has thinned into quiet threads, cool air, lengthening shadows, the soft rustle of robes moving in unhurried rhythm. Everything feels slower now, gentler, as though the monastery itself is preparing to close its eyes. Lanterns glow along the cloister walkway, their light trembling across the stone in warm, wavering patches. A few monks drift toward the church ahead of you, their silhouettes long against the dusk. Others emerge from doorways and side paths, moving silently, as if summoned not by a bell, but by the quiet agreement of shared routine. Your guide glances toward the sky. "It will be a peaceful night," he says. His voice is soft enough to blend with the breeze. You enter the church. The candles are already lit, small islands of gold in the dimming nave. Their flames rise and fall with the faint draught, touching the arches with trembling, the strokes of light. The space feels familiar, almost like a second home now, but also heavier, with the softness of approaching silence. The bell rings once, just once, enough to gather all breath into stillness. Then the chant begins. It unfurls like warm smoke, slow, steady, tender. The monks' voices blend into a single, low hum that fills the room with calm gravity. The sound is quieter than morning chants, quieter even than last night's, shaped by a full day's worth of labor, prayer, and peaceful fatigue. Your 23rd and final major historical fact for this journey arrives gently. Compline often served as a ritual of psychological release, encouraging monks to let go of everything from the day errors, worries, distractions, before entering the great silence. It was as much medicine as devotion. You feel it working on you now. Each breath softer, each thought slower, your mind loosening like a knot untying itself without effort. The monks bow together. Their movements are synchronized but unforced, like leaves drifting in the same breeze. A short reading follows, speaking of refuge, rest, and the sweetness of handing the weight of the day to something larger than oneself. You inhale deeply. The scent of beeswax, warm wood, and faint incense fills your chest. You exhale, and with your breath, leaves everything you didn't realize you were carrying. And now, your final obscure tidbit. Some medieval monasteries believed that if a monk died during the Great Silence, his passing was especially blessed because he crossed from earthly quiet into eternal quiet without any disturbance. This belief brought a strange, comforting reverence to Compline. It framed the night not as an ending, but as a safe passage. The chant resumes for the closing antiphon, simple, serene, drifting like a lullaby across stone and shadow. The final note hovers in the air, glowing, then softens into nothing. A hush settles over the monks. Last night, you felt this hush wrap around you like a blanket. Tonight, it feels like a gentle hand resting on your shoulder. The great silence begins. The monks rise and file out, quiet as breath. You follow them into the courtyard. Night has fully arrived. The sky is black velvet stitched with stars. The air is cool and clean, brushing softly across your face. Robes whisper. Sandals tap gently. The world holds its peace. Your guide walks beside you. You can't speak. Of course, silence has claimed the night, but he gives you a small nod that conveys everything. You have walked our path. You have kept our rhythm. You have belonged here today. Inside the dormitory, the candles glow gently as monks settle onto their straw mattresses. A few shift quietly under wool blankets. One sighs contentedly. The room is filled with the small, intimate sounds of people preparing for rest together without words. You lie down once more. The mattress welcomes your tired limbs. The blanket warms to your body. Your breath falls in with the others, slow, steady, unhurried. The last candle is extinguished. Darkness settles. The great silence deepens. Your day as a medieval monk has come full circle from dawn's first pale breath to night's final, peaceful exhale. And now your journey drifts gently into its closing moments. Let your breath soften now. You've walked the cloisters, tended the herbs, carried the rhythm of the bells, and let the quiet patience of monastic life seep gently into your bones. As the night settles around the monastery, you feel yourself settling too. An easing of the mind, a loosening of the breath, a soft unwinding of thoughts that have worked enough for one day. Imagine yourself lying in the dim dormitory, the scent of straw and warm wool mingling with the cool touch of night air. The walls hold centuries of quiet, the kind that doesn't ask anything from you. The monks around you breathe slowly, steady as small waves brushing a calm shore. Their presence is soft, grounding, peaceful. Above you, the night sky stretches wide and deep, an ocean of stars you can sense, even if you can't see them from your bed. The world outside is hushed, wrapped in the great silence. A silence that doesn't feel empty but full of rest, full of safety, full of gentle stillness. Let your shoulders fall, let your jaw loosen, let your breath lengthen into calm, easy waves. You've completed your day. You've followed the rhythm, waking, working, praying, resting. You've moved through light and shadow, warmth and coolness, effort and ease. Now there is nothing left to do. No task waiting, no bell calling, only the soft weight of blankets, the hush of old stone, and the deep, steady breathing of a world settling into sleep. Let the quiet hold you. Let the night cradle you. You've earned the rest. Drift now. Slowly, gently, peacefully into sleep.